Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? Oh, we're doing well. I forgot to make a Twitter post. Also, yes, I refuse to call Twitter X. I don't know, man. I feel like that's a general consensus from everyone, though. No, it's Twitter. It's Twitter. Forever and always. uh, I hope you all have had a lovely day thus far. I know that I am still trying to get into the groove of things, and just got over that bout of illness. So, we're gonna be taking it nice and easy today. I have a lovely new tea that I found. It was moderately cheap on Amazon. It's just Taylor's blackberry and raspberry infusion, not loose leaf tea, which I usually prefer loose leaf, but it's fine. I'm sure that we'll deal with it. So, since it's been a little bit, I'll give you a little reminder of what happened last time. So, Jane and Mr. Rochester were about to get married. They were literally at the altar when Mason came back. And he brought a lawyer with him and brought it to everyone's attention, including the priest who was trying to marry Jane in Rochester, that Mr. Rochester was already married to his mentally unwell sister. Um, Mr. Rochester then promptly showed everyone the sister's behavior, which was, it makes me question how he got quote unquote tricked into marrying her. Um, and why he hasn't put her in an asylum or anything like that quite yet. It doesn't make any sense to me, honestly, that she's still just kind of sitting around in his house. But she really does seem like she needs help. She seems like she genuinely needs some support. Then again, back in those days, people were more eager to give a woman a lobotomy than they were to, or like, not even that, but like, they were more keen on giving people shock therapy, lobotomies, anything other than actual, caring treatment. But Jane is, yeah, Jane is very unhappy right now. Understandably, I'm frankly unhappy. I mean, I was just as tricked as Jane was. I think everyone was just about. By the way, we are on chapter 27, not chapter 7. We have a little bit under 200 pages left of the book. So it'll be a little wild. It'll be a wild little ride. And we can see where things go, where things end up. Oh, big breath. Like I said, we're going to be taking it nice and easy, nice and gentle, because, we were only recently coughing and wheezing and having a horrible time. So we're going to be very gentle with our vocal cords, and we're still getting back into the groove of reading, so without further ado, big deep breath. Sometime in the afternoon, I raised my head, and looking around and seeing the western sun gilding the sign of its decline on the wall, I asked, "What am I to do?" But the answer my mind gave, "Leave Thornfield at once," was so prompt, so dread, that I stopped my ears. I said I could not bear such words now. That I am not Edward Rochester's bride is the least part of my woe, I alleged. That I have wakened out of most glorious dreams, and found them all void and vain, is a horror I could bear and master. But that I must leave him decidedly, instantly, entirely, is intolerable. I cannot do it. But then a voice within me averred that I could do it, and foretold that I should do it. I wrestled with my own resolution. I wanted to be weak, that I might avoid the awful passage of further suffering I saw laid out for me. And conscience, turned tyrant, held passion by the throat, told her tauntingly she had yet but dipped her dainty foot in the slough, and swore that with an arm of iron he would thrust her down to unsounded depths of agony. Let me be torn away, then I cried. Let another help me. No, you shall tear yourself away. None shall help you. You shall yourself pluck out your right eye. Yourself cut off your right hand. Your heart shall be the victim, and you the priest to transfix it. I rose up suddenly, terror-struck at the solitude which so ruthless a judge haunted, at the silence which so awful a voice filled. My head swam as I stood erect. I perceived that I was sickening from excitement and inanition. Inanition. Neither meat nor drink had passed my lips that day, for I had taken no breakfast, and with a strange pang I now reflected that, long as I had been shut up here, no message had been sent to ask how I was, or to invite me to come down. Not even little Adele tapped at the door. Not even Mrs. Fairfax had sought me. Friends always forget those whom fortune forsakes. Yeah. Yeah. Forsakes, by the way. I murmured as I undrew the bolt and passed out. I stumbled over an obstacle. My head was still dizzy, my sight was dim, and my limbs were feeble. I could not soon recover myself. I fell, but not on the ground. An outstretched arm caught me. I looked up. I was supported by Mr. Rochester, who sat in a chair across my chamber threshold. Oh no. I got such a sudden wave of anxiety. I don't like this. I'm scared. Go back in your room. Not right now. Sorry. Just no. Oh my goodness. No. Go back in. Ah. Heart literally started pounding immediately. I was just so worried so instantly. I hate this. Okay, 1 second. Oh no, he's there. He wants to talk. That's not good. Bro, she has every fucking reason to tell him to go fuck himself. Please tell him to go fuck himself. Okay. You've come out at last, he said. Well, I have been waiting for you long, and listening. Yet not one movement I have heard, nor one sob. 5 minutes more of that death-like hush, and I should have forced the lock like a burglar. So you shun me, you shut yourself up and grieve alone. I would rather you had come and upbraided me with vehemence. You are passionate. I expected a scene of some kind. I was prepared for the hot rain of tears. Only I wanted them to be shed on my breast. No, a senseless floor has received them, or your drenched handkerchief. But I err. You have not wept at all. I see a white cheek and a faded eye, but no trace of tears. I suppose, then, your heart has been weeping blood? Shut the fuck up. Well, Jane, not a word of reproach, nothing bitter, nothing poignant, nothing to cut a feeling or sting a passion. You sit quietly where I have placed you, and regard me with a weary, passive look. Oh boy. Jane, I never meant to wound you thus. If the man who had but one little ewe lamb that was dear to him as a daughter, that ate of his bread and drank of his cup, and lay in his bosom, had by some mistake slaughtered it at the shambles, he would not have rued his bloody blunder more than I now rue mine. Will you ever forgive me? Oh boy, I already read the next line. No, Jane, stop. Reader, I forgave him at the moment and on the spot. There was such deep remorse in his eye, such true pity in his tone, such manly energy in his manner, and besides, there was such unchanged love in his whole look and mien. I forgave him all, yet not in words, not outwardly, only at my heart's core. You know I am a scoundrel, Jane. Ere long, he inquired wistfully, wondering, I suppose, at my continued silence and tameness, the result rather of weakness than of will. Yes, sir. Then tell me so roundly and sharply. Don't spare me. I cannot. I am tired and sick. I want some water. He heaved a sort of shuddering sigh, and, taking me in his arms, carried me downstairs. At first I did not know to what room he had borne me. All was cloudy to my glazed sight. I presently felt the reviving warmth of a fire, for summer, as it was, I had become icy cold in my chamber. He put wine to my lips. I tasted it and revived. Then I ate something he offered me, and was soon myself. I was in the library, sitting in his chair. He was quite near. If I could go out of life now without too sharp a pang, it would be well for me, I thought. Then I should not have to make the effort of cracking my heartstrings in rending them from among Mr. Rochester's. I must leave him, it appears. I do not want to leave him. I cannot leave him. Oh boy. How are you now, Jane? Much better, sir. I shall be well soon. Taste the wine again, Jane. I obeyed him. Then he put the glass on the table, stood before me, and looked at me attentively. Suddenly he turned away, with an inarticulate exclamation, full of passionate emotion of some kind. He walked fast through the room, and came back. He stooped towards me, as if to kiss me. But I remembered caresses were now forbidden. I turned my face away, and put his aside. What? How is this? He exclaimed hastily. Oh, I know. You won't kiss the husband of Bertha Mason? You consider my arms filled and my embrace appropriated. At any rate, there is neither room nor claim for me, sir. Why, Jane, I will spare you the trouble of much talking. I will answer for you. Because I have a wife already? You would reply, I guess rightly. Yes. Yeah. If you think so, you must have a strange opinion of me. You must regard me as a plotting profligate. Oh my god, that's a big word. A base and low rake who has been simulating disinterested love in order to draw you into a snare deliberately laid and strip you of honor and rob you of self-respect. What do you say to that? I see you can say nothing in the first place. You are faint still, and have enough to do to draw your breath. In the second place, you cannot yet accustom yourself to accuse and revile me. And besides, their floodgates of tears are opened, and they would rush out if you spoke much. And you have no desire to expostulate, to upbraid, to make a scene. You are thinking how to act. Talking, you consider, is of no use. I know you. I am on my guard. Yeah. She's like, I don't want to fucking talk. Ugh, anyway. Sir, I do not wish to act against you, I said, and my unsteady voice warned me to curtail my sentence. Not in your sense of the word, but in mine you are scheming to destroy me. You have as good as said that I am a married man. As a married man, you will shun me. Keep out of my way. Just now you have refused to kiss me. You intend to make yourself a complete stranger to me, to live under this roof only as Adele's governess. If ever I say a friendly word to you, if ever a friendly feeling inclines you again to me, you will say that man had nearly made me his mistress. I must be of ice and rock to him, and ice and rock you will accordingly become. I cleared and steadied my voice to reply. All is changed about me, sir. I must change too. There is no doubt of that. And to avoid fluctuations of feeling and continual combats with recollections and associations, there is only one way. Adele must have a new governess, sir. Oh, Adele will go to school. I have settled that already, nor do I mean to torment you with the hideous associations and recollections of Thornfield Hall, this accursed place, this tent of Achan? This insolent vault, offering the ghastliness of living death to the light of the open sky, this narrow stone hell, with its one real fiend, worse than a legion of such as we imagine. Jane, you shall not stay here, nor will I. I was wrong to ever bring you to Thornfield Hall. Knowing as I did how it was haunted, I charged them to conceal from you, before I ever saw you, all knowledge of the curse of the place, merely because I feared Adele never would have a governess to stay if she knew what inmate she was housed. And my plans would not permit me to remove the maniac elsewhere, though I possess an old house, Ferndean Manor, even more retired and hidden than this, where I could have lodged her safely enough, had not a scruple about my unhealthiness of the situation, in the heart of a wood, made my conscience recoil from the arrangement. Probably those damp walls would soon have eased me of her charge, but to each villain his own vice, and mine is not a tendency to indirect assassination, even of what I most hate. Christ. Concealing the madwoman's neighborhood from you, however, was something like covering a child with a cloak, and laying it down near an upas tree. That demon's vicinage is poison, and always was. But I'll shut up Thornfield Hall. I'll nail up the front door and board the lower windows. I'll give Mrs. Poole 200 a year to live here with my wife, as you term that fearful hag. Grace will do much for money, and she shall have her son, the keeper at Grimsby Retreat, to bear her company, and be at hand to give her aid in the paroxysms, when my wife is prompted by her familiar to burn people in their beds at night, to stab them, to bite their flesh from their bones, and so on. Sir, I interrupted him, you are inexorable for that unfortunate lady. You speak of her with hate, with vindictive antipathy. It is cruel. She cannot help being mad. Yikes. Yeah, that's very fair. Jane, my little darling, so I will call you, for so you are. You don't know what you are talking about. You misjudge me again. It is not because she is mad I hate her. If you were mad, do you think I should hate you? Damn. I do indeed, sir. Then you are mistaken, and you know nothing about me, and nothing about the sort of love which I am capable. Every atom of your flesh is as dear to me as my own. In pain and sickness it would still be dear. Your mind is my treasure, and if it were broken, it would be my treasure still. If you raved, my arms should confine you, and not a strait waistcoat. Oh. Your grasp, even in fury, would have a charm for me. If you flew at me as wildly as that woman did this morning, I should receive you in an embrace, at least as fond as it would be restrictive. I should. Okay. No. Ad is supposed to be running, but I don't know where it is. I should not shrink from you with disgust as I did from her. There we go. There's the ad. We have an ad running, so I'm gonna take a moment to take a little sip of my tea. Well, see if my tea is ready to be sipped. It might be a little bit hot right now. There we go. I think I've given up on updating my tags for streams because it's so much work, to like I have to go through and I have to get rid of the playthrough and the first playthrough and the Xbox. It's just exhausting, okay? I don't want to deal with it. I'm tired. Deep breath. Nice deep breath. Dealing with Mr. Rochester being confusing. How is everyone right now, by the way? We have like 10 seconds to, chit chat before we continue on. There's some crazy shit happening in the book. Holy crap. I love that I was like, oh my god, no, Jane, stop. Anyway. Let's continue on. Should not shrink from you with disgust as I did from her. In your quiet moments, you should have no watcher and no nurse but me, and I could hang over you with untiring tenderness. Though you gave me no smile in return, and never weary of gazing into your eyes, though they had no longer a ray of recognition for me. But why do I follow that train of ideas? I was talking of removing you from Thornfield. All you know is prepared for prompt departure. Tomorrow you shall go. I only ask you to endure one more night under this roof, Jane, and then farewell to its miseries and terrors forever. I have a place to repair to. I have a place to repair to, which will be a secure sanctuary from hateful reminiscences, from unwelcome intrusion, even from falsehood and slander. And take Adele with you, sir, I interrupted. She will be a companion for you. What do you mean, Jane? I told you I would send Adele to school, and what do I want with a child for a companion, and not my own child? Blank, a French dancer's bastard. Why do you importune me about her? I say, why do you assign Adele to me for a companion? You spoke of retirement, sir, and retirement and solitude are dull, too dull for you. Solitude, solitude, he reiterated with irritation. I see I must come to an explanation. I don't know what sphinx-like expression is forming in your countenance. You are to share my solitude, do you understand? I shook my head. It required a degree of courage, excited as he was becoming, even to risk that mute sign of dissent. He had been walking fast about the room, and he stopped as if suddenly rooted to one spot. He looked at me long and hard. I turned my eyes from him, fixed them on the fire, and tried to assume and maintain a quiet, collected aspect. Now for the hitch in Jane's character, he said at last, speaking more calmly than from his look I had expected him to speak. The reel of silk has run smoothly enough so far, but I always knew there would come a knot and a puzzle. Here it is. Now for vexation and exasperation and endless trouble. By God, I long to exert a fraction of Samson's strength and break the entanglement like tow. He recommenced his walk, but soon again stopped. Oh, recommenced. He recommenced his walk, but soon again stopped, and this time just before me. Jane, will you hear reason? He stooped and approached his lips to my ear. Because if you won't, I'll try violence. No, Mr. Rochester, no. His voice was hoarse, his look that of a man who is just about to burst an unsufferable bond and plunge headlong into wild license. I saw that in another moment, and with one impetus of frenzy more, I should be able to do nothing with him. The present, the passing second of time, was all I had in which to control and restrain him. A movement of repulsion, flight, fear, would have sealed my doom, and his. But I was not afraid, not in the least. I felt an inward power, a sense of influence, which supported me. The crisis was perilous, but not without its charm, such as the uh such as the Native American perhaps feels when he slips over the rapid in his canoe. I took hold of his clenched hand, loosened the contorted fingers, and said to him soothingly, "Sit down. I'll talk to you as long as you like, and hear all you have to say, whether reasonable or unreasonable." Oh boy. He sat down, but he did not get leave to speak directly. I had been struggling with tears for some time. I had taken great pains to repress them, because I knew he would not like to see me weep. Now, however, I considered it well to let them flow as freely and as long as they liked. If the flood annoyed him, so much the better. So I gave way and cried heartily. Soon I heard him earnestly entreating me to be composed. I said I could not while he was in such a passion. But I am not angry, Jane. I only love you too well. And you had steeled your little pale face with such a resolute frozen look. I could not endure it. Hush now and wipe your eyes. His softened voice announced that he was subdued, so I, in my turn, became calm. Now he made an effort to rest his head on my shoulder, but I would not permit it. Then he would draw me to him. "No, Jane, Jane," he said, in such an accent of bitter sadness it thrilled along every nerve I had. "You don't love me, then? It was only my station and the rank of my wife that you valued? Now that you think me disqualified to become your husband, you recoil from my touch as if I were some toad or ape. No, that's not it." Oh boy. These words cut me. Yet, what could I do or say? I ought probably to have done or said nothing, but I was so tortured by a sense of remorse at thus hurting his feelings, I could not control the wish to drop balm where I had wounded. "I do love you," I said, "more than ever, but I must not show or indulge the feeling, and this is the last time I must express it." "The last time, Jane? What, do you think you can live with me and see me daily, and yet, if you still love me, be always cold and distant?" "No, sir, that I am certain I could not, and therefore I see there is but one way, but you will be furious if I mention it." "Oh, mention it. If I storm, you have the art of weeping." "Mr. Rochester, I must leave you." "For how long, Jane? For a few minutes, while you smooth your hair, which is somewhat disheveled, and bathe your face, which looks feverish?" "I must leave Adele and Thornfield. I must part with you for my whole life. I must begin a new existence among strange faces and strange scenes." "Of course, I told you you should. I pass over the madness about parting from me." "You mean you must become a part of me?" "As to the new existence, it is all right. You shall yet be my wife. I am not married. You shall be Mrs. Rochester, both virtually and nominally. I shall keep only to you as long as you and I live. You shall go to a place I have in the south of France, a whitewashed villa on the shores of the Mediterranean. There you shall live a happy and guarded and most innocent life. Never fear that I wish to lure you into error, to make you my mistress. Why did you shake your head? Jane, you must be reasonable, or in truth I shall again become frantic." His voice and hand quivered, his large nostrils dilated, his eyes blazed. Still I dared to speak. "Sir, your wife is living. That is a fact acknowledged this morning by yourself. If I lived with you as you desire, I should then be your mistress. To say otherwise is sophistical, is false. Jane, I am not a gentle-tempered man. You forget that. I am not long enduring. I am not cool and dispassionate. Out of pity to me and yourself, put your finger on my pulse. Feel how it throbs, and beware. He bared his wrist and offered it to me. The blood was forsaking his cheek and lips. They were growing livid. I was distressed on all hands. To agitate him thus deeply by a resistance he so abhorred was cruel. To yield was out of the question. I did what human beings do instinctively when they are driven to utter extremity, looked for aid to one higher than man. The words "God help me" burst involuntary from my lips. "I am a fool," cried Mr. Rochester suddenly. "I keep telling her I am not married, and do not explain to her why. I forget she knows nothing of the character of that woman, or of the circumstances attending my infernal union with her. Oh, I am certain Jane will agree with me in opinion when she knows all that I know. Just put your hand in mine, Janet, that I may have the evidence of touch as well as sight to prove you are near me, and I will, in a few words, show you the real state of the case. Can you listen to me?" Okay, come on, explain it up, buddy boy. "Yes, sir, for hours, if you will. I ask only minutes, Jane. Did you ever hear or know that I was not the eldest son of my house, that I once had a brother older than I? I remember Mrs. Fairfax told me so once. And did you ever hear that my father was an avaricious, grasping man? I have understood something to that effect. Well, Jane, being so, it was his resolution to keep the property together. He could not bear the idea of dividing his estate and leaving me a fair portion. All, he resolved, should go to my brother, Roland. Yet as little could he endure that a son of his should be a poor man. I must be provided for by a wealthy marriage. He sought me a partner betimes, Mr. Mason, a West India planter and merchant, and was his old acquaintance. He was certain his possessions were real and vast. He made inquiries. Mr. Mason, he found, had a son and a daughter, and he learned from him that he could and would give the latter a fortune of £30,000. That sufficed. When I left college, I was sent out to Jamaica to espouse a bride already courted for me. My father said nothing about her money, but he told me Miss Mason was the boast of Spanish Town for her beauty, and this was no lie. I found her a fine woman, in the style of Blanche Ingram, tall, dark, and majestic. Her family wished to secure me because I was of a good. I don't know. I was of good traits, and so did she. They showed her to me, in parties, splendidly dressed. I seldom saw her alone, and had very little private conversation with her. She flattered me, and lavishly displayed for my pleasure her charms and accomplishments. All the men in her circle seemed to admire her and envy me. I was dazzled, stimulated, my senses were excited, and being ignorant, raw, and inexperienced, I thought I loved her. There's no folly so besotted that the idiotic rivalries of society, the prudence, the rashness, the blindness of youth, will not hurry a man to its commission. Her relatives encouraged me, competitors piqued me, she allured me. A marriage was achieved almost before I knew where I was. Oh, I have no respect for myself when I think of that act. An agony of inward contempt masters me. I never loved, I never esteemed. I did not even know her. I was not sure of the existence of one virtue in her nature. I had marked neither modesty, nor benevolence, nor candor, nor refinement in her mind or manners, and as I married her, gross, groveling, mole-eyed blockhead that I was, with less sin I might have, but let me remember to whom I am speaking. My bride's mother I had never seen. I understood she was dead. The honeymoon over, I learned my mistake. She was only mad and shut up in a lunatic asylum. There was a younger brother, too, a complete dumb idiot, the elder one, whom you have seen, and whom I cannot hate, whilst I abhor all his kindred, because he has some grains of affection in his feeble mind, shown in the continued interest he takes in his wretched sister. And so, in a dog-like attachment, he once bore me. Will probably be in the same state one day. My father and brother Roland knew all this, but they thought only of the 30,000 pounds and joined in the plot against me. These were vile discoveries, but except for the treachery of concealment, I should have made them no subject of reproach to my wife. Even when I found her nature wholly alien to mine, her tastes obnoxious to me, her cast of mind common, low, narrow, and singularly incapable of being led to anything higher, expanded to anything larger, when I found that I could not pass a single evening nor a single hour of the day with her in comfort, that kindly conversation could not be sustained between us, because whatever topic I started immediately received from her a turn at once coarse and trite, perverse and imbecile. When I perceived that I should never have a quiet or settled household, because no servant would bear the continued outbreaks of her violent and unreasonable temper, or the vexations of her absurd, contradictory, exacting orders. Even then I restrained myself. I eschewed upbraiding, I curtailed remonstrance. I tried to devour my repentance and disgust in secret. I repressed the deep antipathy I felt. Jane, I will not trouble you with the abominable details. Some strong words shall express what I have to say. I lived with that woman upstairs 4 years, and before that time she had tried me indeed. Her character ripened and developed with frightful rapidity. Her vices sprang up fast and rank. They were so strong, only cruelty could check them, and I would not use cruelty. What a horrible intellect she had, and what giant propensities. How fearful were the curses of those propensities entailed on me. Bertha Mason, the true daughter of an infamous mother, dragged me through all the hideous and degrading agonies which must attend a man bound to a wife at once intemperate and unchaste. Damn. My brother, in the interval, was dead, and at the end of the 4 years my father died too. I was rich enough now, yet poor to hideous indigence? I don't know. A nature the most gross, impure, depraved I ever saw was associated with mine, and called by the law and by society a part of me, and I could not rid myself of it by any legal proceedings, for the doctors now discovered that my wife was mad. Her excesses had prematurely developed the germs of insanity. Jane, you don't like my narrative. You look almost sick. Shall I defer the rest to another day? No, sir. Finish now. I pity you. I do earnestly pity you. Pity, Jane, from some people is as noxious and insulting sort of tribute. Is a noxious an insulting sort of tribute, which one is justified in hurling back in the teeth of those who offer it. But that is the sort of pity native to callous, selfish hearts. It is a hybrid, egotistical pain at hearing of woes, crossed with ignorant contempt for those who have endured them. But that is not your pity, Jane. It is not the feeling of which your whole face is full at this moment, with which your eyes are now almost overflowing, with which your heart is heaving, with which your hand is trembling in mine. Your pity, my darling, is the suffering mother of love. Its anguish is the very natal pang of the divine passion. I accept it, Jane. Let the daughter have free advent. My arms wait to receive her. Mm, sorry, I thought I heard someone at the door. Yeah, one moment. I'm just gonna be right back and check the door. I'll be right back. One moment, so sorry. And showed. Thank you so much. Also, did you see that, Arch? I love it when that happens so much. It's so funny. Just kills me. Absolutely kills me. But yeah, thank you so much for the bits. You're awesome. What is that? Hello? Okay, it's nothing. Gotcha. You dead. You dead, bitch. Okay, but like, are we sure this is nothing? Like, are we like really absolutely sure this is nothing? Okay. I guess. Hi, Club Sunshine. How's everyone doing? So, what brings Sunbury's number one girl here today? Oh, you probably know why I'm here, you dumb fuck. Yes, I got her! Holy shit! And I'm back. Sorry about that. If I had stopped by to bring me some food, and I took the moment to, chill for a moment. Now, sir, proceed. What did you do when you found she was mad? Jane, I approached the verge of despair. A remnant of self-respect was all that intervened between me and the gulf. In the eyes of the world, I was doubtless covered with grimy dishonor, but I resolved to be clean in my own sight. And to the last, I repudiated. Repudiated? Thank you for the hydrate. I'll give a quick sip of my tea. Thank you. Jane, I approached the verge of despair. A remnant of self-respect was all that intervened between me and the gulf. In the eyes of the world, I was doubtless covered with grimy dishonor, but I resolved to be clean in my own sight. And to the last, I repudiated the contamination of her crimes and wrenched myself from connection with her mental effects. Still, society associated my name and person with hers. I yet saw her and heard her daily. Something of her breath, foe, mixed with the air I breathed. And besides, I remembered I had once been her husband. That recollection was then, and is now, inexpressibly odious to me. Moreover, I knew that while she lived I could never be the husband of another and better wife. And though 5 years my senior, her family and her father had lied to me even in the particular of her age. She was likely to live as long as I, being as robust in frame as she is infirm in mind. Thus, at the age of 26, I was hopeless. One night I had been awakened by her yells. Since the medical men had pronounced her mad, she had, of course, been shut up. It was a fiery West Indian night, one of the description that frequently precede the hurricanes of those climates. Being unable to sleep in bed, I got up and opened the window. The air was like sulphur steams. I could find no refreshment anywhere. Mosquitoes came buzzing in and hummed sullenly around the room. The sea, which I could hear from thence, rumbled dull like an earthquake. Black clouds were casting up over it. The moon was setting in the waves, broad and red, like a hot cannonball. She threw her last bloody glance over a world quivering with the ferment of tempest. I was physically influenced by the atmosphere and scene, and my ears were filled with the curses the maniac still shrieked out, wherein she momentarily mingled my name with such a tone of demon hate. With such language, no professed harlot ever had a fouler vocabulary than she. Though 2 rooms off, I heard every word, the thin partitions of the West India house opposing but slight obstruction to her wolfish cries. 1 second. This life, said I at last, is hell. This is the air. Those are the sounds of the bottomless pit. I have a right to deliver myself from it if I can. The sufferings of this mortal state will leave me with the heavy flesh that now cumbers my soul. Of the fanatics burning eternity, I have no fear. There is not a future state worse than this present one. Let me break away and go home to God. I said this whilst I knelt down at and unlocked a trunk which contained a brace of loaded pistols. I mean to shoot myself. I only entertained the intention for a moment. For, not being insane, the crisis of exquisite and unalloyed despair, which had originated the wish and design of self-destruction, was past in a second. A wind fresh from Europe blew over the ocean and rushed through the open casement. The storm broke, streamed, thundered, and blazed, and the air grew pure. I then framed and fixed a resolution. While I walked under the dripping orange trees of my wet garden, and among its drenched pomegranates and pineapples, and while the refulgent dawn of the tropics kindled around me, I reasoned thus, Jane. And now listen, for it was true wisdom that consoled me in that hour, and showed me the right path to follow. The sweet wind from Europe was still whispering in the refreshed leaves, and the Atlantic was thundering in glorious liberty. My heart dried up and scorched for a long time, swelled to the tone, and filled with living blood. My being longed for renewal. My soul thirsted for a pure draught. I saw hope revive. I felt regeneration possible. From a flowery arch at the bottom of my garden, I gazed over the sea, bluer than the sky. The old world was beyond. Clear prospects opened thus. Go, said Hope, and live again in Europe. There is not known what a sullied name you bear. Oh, there, it is not known what a sullied name you bear, nor what a filthy burden is bound to you. You take the maniac with you to England, confine her with due attendance and precautions at Thornfield, then travel yourself to what clime you will, and form what new tie you like. That woman who has so abused your long suffering, so sullied your name, so outraged your honor, so blighted your youth, is not your wife, nor are you her husband. See that she is cared for as her condition demands, and you have done all that God and humanity require of you. Let her identity, her connection with yourself, be buried in oblivion. You are bound to impart them to no living being. Place her in safety and comfort, shelter her degradation with secrecy, and leave her. I acted precisely on this suggestion. My father and brother had not made my marriage known to their acquaintance. because in the very first letter I wrote to apprise them. One second, he didn't close the door correctly. Oh, and just in time for there to be an ad break. God damn it. Well, this is certainly getting interesting. Hmm. I wonder if Jane's going to be okay with it. You know? Oh, like, I wonder if this explanation is going to be enough for her. I'd probably still be quite, uneasy. I'd most likely be like, I don't know, man, this seems a little bit weird. Just, I don't know, man. I don't know. Anyway. I acted precisely on this suggestion. My father and brother had not made my marriage known to their acquaintance, because in the very first letter I wrote to apprise them of the union, having already begun to experience extreme disgust of its consequences, and from the family character and constitution, seeing a hideous future opening to me, I added an urgent charge to keep it secret. And very soon the infamous conduct of my wife my father had selected for me was such as to make him blush to own her as his daughter-in-law. Far from desiring to publish the connection, he became as anxious to conceal it as myself. Very fair. To England, then, I conveyed her. A fearful voyage I had with such a monster in the vessel. Glad was I when I at last got her into Thornfield, and saw her safely lodged in that third-story room, of whose secret inner cabinet she has now for 10 years made a wild beast's den, a goblin's cell. I had some trouble in finding an attendant for her, as it was necessary to select one on whose fidelity I on whose fidelity dependence could be placed, for her ravings would inevitably betray my secret. Besides, she had lucid intervals of days, sometimes weeks, which she filled up with abuse of me. At last I hired Grace Poole from the Grimsby Retreat. She and the surgeon, Carter, who dressed Mason's wounds that night he was stabbed and worried, are the only two I have ever admitted to my confidence. Mrs. Fairfax may indeed have suspected something, but she could have gained no precise knowledge as to facts. Grace has, on the whole, proved a good keeper, though owing partly to a fault of her own, of which it appears nothing can cure her, which is incident to her harassing profession. Her vigilance has been more than once lulled and baffled. The lunatic is both cunning and malignant. She has never failed to take advantage of her guardian's temporary lapses. Once to secrete the knife with which she stabbed her brother, and twice to possess herself of a key of her cell, and issue therefrom in the night time. On the first of these occasions, she perpetrated to attempt to burn me in my bed. On the second, she paid that ghastly visit to you. I thank Providence, who watched over you, that she then spent her fury on your wedding apparel, which perhaps brought back vague reminiscences of her own bridal days. But on what might have happened, I cannot endure to reflect. When I think of the thing which flew at my throat this morning, hanging its uh black and scarlet visage over the nest of my dove. My blood curdles. And what, sir, I asked while he paused, did you do when you had settled her here? Where did you go? What did I do, Jane? I transformed myself into a will-o'-the-wisp. Where did I go? I pursued wanderings as wild as those of the March spirit. I sought the continent and went devious through all its lands. My fixed desire was to seek and find a good, intelligent woman, whom I could love, a contrast to the fury I left at Thornfield. But you could not marry, sir. I had determined and was convinced that I could and ought. It was not my original intention to deceive, as I have deceived you. I meant to tell my tale plainly and make my proposals openly, and it appeared to me so absolutely rational that I should be considered free to love and be loved. I never doubted some woman might be found willing and able to understand my case and accept me, in spite of the curse with which I was burdened. Well, sir, when you are inquisitive, Jane, you always make me smile. You open your eyes like an eager bird, and make every now and then a restless movement, as if answers in speech did not flow fast enough for you, and you wanted to read the tablet of one's heart. But before I go on, tell me what you mean by your well, sir? It is a small phrase very frequent with you, and which many a time has drawn me on and through interminable talk. I don't very well know why. I mean, what next? How did you proceed? What came of such an event? Precisely. What do you wish to know now? Whether you found anyone you liked, whether you asked her to marry you, and what she said. I can tell you whether I found anyone I liked, and whether I asked her to marry me, but what she said is yet to be recorded in the book of fate. For 10 long years, I roved about, living first in one capital, then another, sometimes in St. Petersburg, oftener in Paris, occasionally in Rome, Naples, and Florence, provided with plenty of money and the passport of an old name. I could choose my own society, no circles were closed against me. I sought my ideal of a woman amongst English ladies, French countesses, Italian signoras, and German Graffinnen, I think. I could not find her. Sometimes, for a fleeting moment, I thought I had caught a glance, heard a tone, beheld a form which announced the realization of my dream. But I was presently undeserved. You are not to suppose that I desired perfection, either of mind or person. I longed only for what suited me, for the antipodes of the Creole, and I longed vainly. Amongst them all, I found not one whom, ever had I been ever so free, I, warned as I was of the risks, the horrors, the loathings of incongruous unions, would have asked to marry me. Disappointment made me reckless. I tried dissipation, never debauchery. That I hated and hate. Ah. That was my wife's attribute. Rooted disgust at it, and her restrained me much, even in pleasure. Any enjoyment that bordered on riot seemed to approach me to her and her vices, and I eschewed it. Yet I could not live alone, so I tried the companionship of mistresses. The first I chose was Celine Varens, another of those steps which make a man spurn himself when he recalls them. You already know what she was, and how my liaison with her terminated. She had two successors, an Italian, Giacinta, and a German, Clara, both considered singularly handsome. What was their beauty to me in a few weeks? Giacinta was unprincipled and violent. I tired of her in 3 months, and Clara was honest and quiet, but heavy, mindless, and unimpressible. Not one whit to my taste. I was glad to give her a sufficient sum to set her up in a good line of business, and so get decently rid of her. But Jane, I see by your face you are not forming a very favorable opinion of me just now. Yeah, you think me an unfeeling, loose-principled rake, don't you? I don't like you so well as I have done sometimes indeed, sir. Did it not seem to you in the least wrong to live that way, first with one mistress and then another? You talk of it as a mere matter of course. It was with me, and I did not like it. It was a groveling fashion of existence. I should never like to return to it. Hiring a mistress is the next worst thing to buying a slave. Both are often, by nature, and always by position, inferior, and to live familiarly with inferiors is degrading. I now hate the recollection of the time I passed with Celine, Giacinta, and Clara. 1 second. There we go. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. Didn't want to do it in your ear. I felt the truth of these words, and I drew from them the certain inference that if I were so far to forget myself and all the teaching that had ever been instilled into me, as under any pretext, with any justification, through any temptation, to become the successor of these poor girls, he would one day regard me with the same feeling which now, in his mind, desecrated their memory. I did not give utterance to this conviction. It was enough to feel it. I was impressed it on I impressed it on my heart that it might remain there to serve me as an aid in the time of trial. Now, Jane, why don't you say, well, sir? I have not done. You are looking grave. You disapprove of me still, I see, but let me come to the point. Last January, rid of all mistresses, in a harsh, bitter frame of mind, the result of a useless, roving, lonely life, corroded with disappointment, sourly disposed against all men, and especially against all womankind, for I began to regard the notion of an intellectual, faithful, loving woman as a mere dream. Recalled by business, I came back to England. On a frosty winter afternoon, I rode in sight of Thornfield Hall, abhorred spot. I expected no peace, no pleasure there. On a stile in Hay Lane, I saw a quiet little figure sitting by herself. I passed present I passed it as negligently as I did the pollard willow opposite to it. I had no presentiment of what it would be to me, no inward warning that the arbitress of my life, my genius for good or evil, waited there in humble guise. I did not know it, even when on the occasion of Mesrour's accident it came up and gravely offered me help. Childish and slender creature, it seemed as if a linnet had hopped to my foot and proposed to bear me on its tiny wing. I was surly, but the thing would not go. It stood by me with strange perseverance, and looked and spoke with a sort of authority. I must be aided, and by that hand, and aided I was. When once I had pressed the frail shoulder, something new, a fresh sap and sense, stole into my frame. It was well I had learned that this elf must return to me. that it belonged to my house down below, or I could not have felt it pass away from under my hand and seen it vanish behind the dim hedge without singular regret. I heard you come home that night, Jane, though probably you were not aware that I thought of you or watched for you. The next day I observed you, myself unseen, and for half an hour while you played with Adele in the gallery. It was a snowy day, I recollect, and you could not go out of the doors. I was in my room. The door was ajar. I could both listen and watch. Adele claimed your outward attention for a while, yet I fancied your thoughts were elsewhere. But you were very patient with her, my little Jane. You talked to her and amused her a long time. When at last she left you, you lapsed at once into deep reverie. You betook yourself slowly to pace the gallery. Now and then, in passing a casement, you glanced out at the thick falling snow. You listened to the sobbing wind, and again you paced gently on and dreamed. I think those day visions were not dark. There was a pleasurable illumination in your eye occasionally, a soft excitement in your aspect, which told of no bitter, bilious, hypochondriac brooding. Your look revealed rather the sweet musings of youth when its spirit follows on willing wings the flight of hope, up and on to an ideal heaven. The voice of Mrs. Fairfax speaking to a servant in the hall wakened you, and now curiously you smiled to and at yourself, Janet. There was much sense in your smile. It was very shrewd, and seemed to make light of your own abstraction. It seemed to say, my fine visions are all very well, but I must not forget they are absolutely unreal. I have a rosy sky and a green flowery Eden in my brain, but without, I am perfectly aware, lies at my feet a rough tract to travel, and around me gather black tempests to encounter. You ran downstairs and demanded of Mrs. Fairfax some occupation, the weekly house accounts to make up, or something of that sort, I think it was. I was vexed with you for getting out of my sight. Impatiently I waited for evening, when I might summon you to my presence. An unusual to me, a perfectly new character I suspected was yours. I desired to search it deeper and know it better. You entered the room with a look and air at once shy and independent. You were quaintly dressed, much as you are now. I made you talk. Ere long I found you full of strange contrasts. Your garb and manner were restricted by rule. Your air was often diffident, and altogether that of one refined by nature, but absolutely unused to society, and a good deal afraid of making herself disadvantageously conspicuous by some solecism or blunder. Yet when addressed, you lifted a keen, a daring, and a glowing eye to your interlocutor's face. There was penetration and power in each glance you gave. When plied by close questions, you found ready and round answers. Very soon you seemed to get used to me. I believe you felt the existence of sympathy between you and your grim and cross master, Jane, for it was astonishing to see how quickly a certain pleasant ease tranquilized your manner. Snarl as I would, you showed no surprise, fear, annoyance, or displeasure at my moroseness. You watched me, and now and then smiled at me with a simple yet sagacious grace I cannot describe. I was at once content and stimulated with what I saw. I liked what I had seen, and wished to see more, yet for a long time I treated you distantly, and sought your company rarely. I was an intellectual epicure, and wished to prolong the gratification of making this novel and piquant acquaintance. Besides, I was for a while troubled with a haunting fear that if I handled the flower freely its bloom would fade. The sweet charm of freshness would leave it. I did not then know that it was no transitory blossom, but rather the radiant resemblance of one cut in an indestructible gem. That's pretty. I like that. I like that image. Indestructible gem. Moreover, I wished to see whether you would seek me if I shunned you, but you did not. You kept in the schoolroom as still as your own desk and easel. If by chance I met you, you passed me soon, and with as little token of recognition as was consistent with respect. Your habitual expression in those days, Jane, was a thoughtful look, not despondent, for you were not sickly, but not buoyant, for you had little hope, and no actual pleasure. I wondered what you thought of me, or if you ever thought of me, and resolved to find this out. I resumed my notice of you. There was something glad in your glance and genial in your manner. When you conversed, I saw you had a social heart. It was the silent schoolroom. It was the tedium of your life that made you mournful. I permitted myself the delight of being kind to you. Kindness stirred emotions soon. Your face became soft in expression, your tones gentle. I liked my name pronounced by your lips in a grateful, happy accent. I used to enjoy a chance meeting with you, Jane, at this time. There was a curious hesitation in your manner. You glanced at me with a slight trouble, a hovering doubt. You did not know what my caprice might be, whether I was going to play the master and be stern, or the friend and be benignant. Benignant? I was now too fond of you. I was now too fond of you often to simulate the first whim, and when I stretched my hand out cordially, which bloom and light and bliss rose, such bloom and light and bliss rose to your young, wistful features. I had much ado often to avoid straining you then and there to my heart. Oh. Don't talk any more of those days, sir, I interrupted, furtively dashing away some tears from my eyes. His language was torture for me, for I knew what I must do, and do soon, and all these reminiscences and these revelations of his feelings only made my work more difficult. No, Jane, he returned. What necessity is there to dwell on the past when the present is so much surer, the future so much brighter? I shuddered to hear the infatuated assertion. You see now how the case stands, do you not? He continued. After youth and manhood passed half in unutterable misery, uh, and half in dreary solitude, I have for the first time found what I can truly love. I have found you. You are my sympathy, my better self, my good angel. I am bound to you with a strong attachment. I think you good, gifted, lovely. A fervent, a solemn passion is conceived in my heart. It leans to you, draws you to my center and spring of life, wraps my existence about you, and, kindling in pure, powerful flame, fuses you and me in one. It was because I felt and knew this that I resolved to marry you. To tell me that I had already a wife is empty mockery. You know now that I had but a hideous demon. I was wrong to attempt to deceive you, but I feared a stubbornness that exists in your character. I feared early instilled prejudice. I wanted to have you safe before hazarding confidences. This was cowardly. I should have appealed to your nobleness and magnanimity at first, as I do now, opened to you plainly my life of agony, described to you my hunger and thirst after a higher and worthier existence, shown to you not my resolution, that word is weak, but my restless bent to love faithfully and well, where I am faithfully and well loved in return. Then I should have asked you to accept my pledge of fidelity and to give me yours. Jane, give it me now. A pause. Boy. Why are you silent, Jane? I was experiencing an ordeal. A hand of fiery iron grasped my vitals. Terrible moment, full of struggle, blackness, burning. Not a human being that ever lived could wish to be loved better than I was loved. And him who thus loved me I absolutely worshipped, and I must renounce love and idol. One drear word comprised my intolerable duty. Depart. Jane, you understand what I want of you? Just this promise. I will be yours, Mr. Rochester. Mr. Rochester, I will not be yours. Another long silence. Jane, recommenced he, with a gentleness that broke me down with grief and turned me stone cold with ominous terror, for this still voice was the pant of a lion rising. Jane, do you mean to go one way in the world and let me go in another? I do. Jane, bending towards and embracing me, do you mean it now? I do. And now, softly kissing my forehead and cheek, I do, extricating myself from restraint rapidly and completely. Oh, Jane, this is bitter. This is wicked. It would not be wicked to love me. It would be to obey you. A wild look raised his brows, crossed his features. He rose, but he forbore yet. I laid my hand on the back of the chair for support. I shook, I feared, but I resolved. One instant, Jane. Give one glance to my horrible life when you are gone. All happiness will be torn away with you. What then is left? For a wife I have but the maniac upstairs. As well might you refer me to some corpse in yonder churchyard? What shall I do, Jane? Where turn for a companion and for some hope? Do as I do. Trust in God and yourself. Believe in heaven. Hope to meet again there. Then you will not yield. No. Then you condemn me to live wretched and die accursed? His voice rose. I advise you to live sinless, and I wish you to die tranquil. Then you snatch love and innocence from me? You fling me back on lust for a passion, vice for an occupation? Mr. Rochester, I no more assign this fate to you than I grasp at it for myself. We were born to strive and endure, you as well as I. Do so. You will forget me before I forget you. Ow. That was a little mean, Jane. That was a little bit rude. You make me a liar by such language. You sully my honor. I declared I could not change. You tell me to my face I shall change soon. And what a distortion in your judgment, what a perversity in your ideas, is proved by your conduct. It is better to drive a fellow creature to despair than to transgress a mere human law, no man being injured by the breach. For you have neither relatives nor acquaintances whom you need to fear to offend by living with me. This was true, and while he spoke, my very conscience and reason turned traitors against me, and charged me with crime in resisting him. They spoke almost as loud as feelings, and that clamored wildly. Oh, comply, it said. Think of his misery, think of his danger, look at his state when left alone. Remember his headlong nature, consider the recklessness following on despair. Soothe him, save him, love him. Tell him you love him and will be his. Who in the world cares for you? Or who will be injured by what you do? Yikes. Still indomitable was the reply. I care for myself. The more solitary, the more friendless, the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself. Oh no. Oh no. I literally saw a TikTok where someone was like, I can't be proud of myself for being a good person because that makes me not a good person. God, it's like she's just trying to hurt herself because she thinks that hurting herself uh makes her a better person. And that's not necessarily true. Not at all. Not even a little bit. I don't know if it's a good idea for her to stay with Mr. Rochester. Like that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like it's a very difficult decision. It's a very difficult call to make. Like in this situation, I don't know what I would do. I'd feel very conflicted. Like I'd feel extremely conflicted. And again, she also has a little bit of religious trauma going on too. I mean, she has a lot of just general trauma going on with her, so you know. Okay. Yeah, it is almost over, so I can continue reading soon. Oh, boy, oh boy. I don't know where this is going. Still indomitable was the reply. I care for myself. The more solitary, the more friendless, the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself. I will keep the law given by God, sanctioned by man. I will hold to the principles received by me when I was sane, and not mad as I am now. Laws and principles are not for the times when there is no temptation. They are for such moments as this, when body and soul rise in mutiny against their rigor. Stringent are they, inviolate they must be. Um, if at any, if at my individual convenience I might break them, what would be their worth? They have a worth, so I have always believed, and if I cannot believe it now, it is because I am insane, quite insane, with my veins running fire and my heart beating faster than I can count its throbs. Preconceived opinions, foregone determinations, are all I have at this hour to stand by. There I plant my foot. Oh boy. I did. Mr. Rochester, reading my countenance, saw I had done so. His fury was wrought to its highest. He must yield to it for a moment. Whatever followed, he crossed the floor and seized my arm and grasped my waist. He seemed to devour me with his flaming glance. Physically, I felt at the moment powerless as stubble exposed to the draught and glow of a furnace. Mentally, I still possessed my soul, and with it the certainty of ultimate safety. The soul, fortunately, was an interpreter, often an unconscious but still a truthful interpreter, in the eye. My eye rose to his, and while I looked in his fierce face, I gave an involuntary sigh. His gripe was painful, and my overtaxed strength almost exhausted. Never, said he, as he ground his teeth. Never was anything at once so frail and so indomitable. A mere reed she feels in my hand, and he shook me with the force of his hold. I could bend her with my finger and thumb, and what good would it do if I bent, if I uptore, if I crushed her? Consider that eye, consider the resolute, wild, free thing looking out of it, defying me with more than courage, with a stern triumph. Whatever I do with its cage, I cannot get at it. The savage, the beautiful creature. If I tear, if I rend the slight prison, my outrage will only let the captive loose. Conqueror I might be of the house, but the inmate would escape to heaven before I could call myself possessor of its clay dwelling. Dwelling place. And it is you, spirit, with will and energy and virtue and purity that I want, not alone your brittle frame. Of yourself you could come with soft flight and nestle against my heart, if you would, seized against your will. You will elude the grasp like an essence. You will vanish ere I inhale your fragrance. Oh, come, Jane, come. As he said this, he released me from his clutch and only looked at me. The look was far worse to resist than the frantic strain. Only an idiot, however, would have succumbed now. I had dared and baffled his fury. I must elude his sorrow. I retired to the door. You are going, Jane. I am going, sir. You are leaving me? Yes. You will not come? You will not be my comforter, my rescuer, my deep love, my wild woe, my frantic prayer, all or nothing to you? What unutterable pathos was in his voice. How hard it was to reiterate firmly, I am going. Jane! Mr. Rochester. Withdrawn, then. I consent. But remember, you leave me here in anguish. Go up to your own room. Think over all I have said, and Jane, cast a glance on my sufferings. Think of me. He turned away, threw himself on his face on the sofa. Oh, Jane, my hope, my love, my life. Broke in anguish from his lips. Then came a deep, strong sob. Oh, 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 my heart. I had already gained the door, but, reader, I walked back as determinedly as I had retreated. I knelt down by him, turned his face from the cushion to me. I kissed his cheek. I smoothed his hair with my hand. God bless you, my dear master, I said. God keep you from harm and wrong, direct you, solace you, reward you well for your past kindness to me. Heartbreak. Little Jane's love would have been my best reward, he answered. Without it, my heart is broken, but Jane will give me her love, yes, nobly, generously. Up the blood rushed to his face. Forth flashed the fire from his eyes. Erect he sprang. He held his arms out, but I evaded the embrace, and at once quitted the room. Farewell was the cry of my heart as I left him. Despair added, farewell forever. Damn. Damn, damn, damn. That was rough. That was real rough. That night I never thought to sleep, but a slumber fell on me as soon as I lay down in bed. I was transported in thought to the scenes of childhood. I dreamt I lay in the red room at Gateshead, that the night was dark, and my mind impressed with strange fears. The light that long ago had struck me into syncope, recalled in vision, seemed glidingly to mount the wall, and tremblingly to pause in the center of the obscured ceiling. I lifted up my head to look. The roof resolved to clouds. High and dim, the gleam was such as the moon imparts to vapors she is about to sever. I watched her come, watched with the strangest anticipation, as though some word of doom were to be written on her desk. She broke forth, as never moon yet burst from cloud. A hand first penetrated the sable folds and waved them away. Then, not a moon, but a white human form shone in the azure, inclining a glorious brow earthward. It gazed and gazed on me. It spoke to my spirit, immeasurably distant, was the tone, yet so near it whispered in my heart. My daughter, flee temptation. Mother, I will. So I answered after I had walked from the trance-like dream. It was yet night, but July nights are short. Soon after midnight, dawn comes. It cannot be too early to commence the task I have to fulfill, thought I. I rose. I was dressed, for I had taken off nothing but my shoes. I knew where to find in my drawers some linen, a locket, a ring. In seeking these articles, I encountered the beads of a pearl necklace Mr. Rochester had forced me to accept a few days ago. I left that. It was not mine. It was the visionary bride's who had melted in air. The other articles I made up in a parcel, my purse containing 20 shillings. It was all I had. I put in my pocket. I tied on my straw bonnet, pinned my shawl, took the parcel and my slippers, which I would not put on yet, and stole from my room. Farewell, kind Mrs. Fairfax, I whispered as I glided past her door. Farewell, my darling Adele, I said as I glanced towards the nursery. No thought could be admitted of entering to embrace her. I had to deceive a fine ear. For aught I knew, it might now be listening. I would have got past Mr. Rochester's chamber without a pause, but my heart momentarily stopping its beat at the threshold, my foot was forced to stop also. No sleep was there. The inmate was walking restlessly from wall to wall, and again he sighed while I listened. There was a heaven, a temporary heaven, in this room for me, if I chose. But to go in and to say, Mr. Rochester, I will love you and live with you through life till death, and a fount of rapture would spring to my lips. I thought of this. That kind master, who would not sleep now, was waiting with impatience for day. He would send for me in the morning. I should be gone. He would have me sought for, vainly. He would feel himself forsaken, his love rejected. He would suffer, perhaps grow desperate. I thought of this too. My hand moved towards the lock. I caught it back and glided on. Drearily, I wound my way downstairs. I knew what I had to do, and I did it mechanically. I sought the key of the side door in the kitchen. I sought, too, a vial of oil and a feather. I oiled the key and got the lock. I got some water, I got some bread. For perhaps I should have to walk far, and my strength, sorely shaken of late, must not break down. All this I did without one sound. I opened the door, passed out, shut it softly. Dim dawn glimmered in the yard. The great gates were closed and locked, but a wicket in one of them was only latched. Through that I departed, too. It, too, I shut. And now I was out of Thornfield. A mile off, beyond the fields, lay a road which stretched in the contrary direction to Millcote. A road I had never travelled, but often noticed, and wondered where it led. Thither I bent my steps. No reflection was to be allowed now. Not one glance was to be cast back, not even one forward. Not one thought was to be given either to the past or the future. The first was a page so heavenly sweet, so deadly sad, that to read one line of it would dissolve my courage and break down my energy. The last was an awful blank, something like the world when the deluge was gone by. I skirted fields and hedges and lanes till after sunrise. I believe it was a lovely summer morning. I know my shoes, which I had put on when I left the house, were soon wet with dew. But I looked neither to the rising sun, nor smiling sky, nor awakening nature. He who is taken out to pass through a fair scene to the scaffold thinks not of the flowers that smile on his road. but of the block and axe edge at the of the disseverment of bone and vein, of the grave gaping at the end. And I thought of drear flight and homeless wandering, and oh, with agony I thought of what I left. I could not help it. I thought of him now, in his room, watching the sunrise, hoping I should soon come to say I would stay with him and be his. I longed to be his. I panted to return. It was not too late. I could yet spare him the bitter pang of bereavement. As yet my flight, I was sure, was undiscovered. I could go back and be his comforter, his pride, his redeemer from misery, perhaps from ruin. Oh, that fear of his self-abandonment, far worse than my abandonment. How it goaded me. It was a barbed arrowhead in my breast. It tore me when I tried to extract it. It sickened me when remembrance thrust it further in. Birds began singing in brake and copse. Birds were faithful to their mates. Birds were emblems of love. What was I? In the midst of my pain of heart and frantic effort of principle, I abhorred myself. I had no solace from self-approbation, none even from self-respect. I had injured, wounded, left my master. I was hateful in my own eyes. Still, I could not return, nor retrace one step. God must have led me on. As to my own will or conscience, impassioned grief had trampled one and stifled the other. I was weeping wildly as I walked along my solitary way. Fast, fast I went, like one delirious. A weakness beginning inwardly, extended to my limbs, seized me, and I fell. I lay on the ground some minutes, pressing my face to the wet turf. I had some fear or hope that here I should die, but I was soon up, crawling forward on my hands and knees, then again raised to my feet, as eager and as determined as ever to reach the road. When I got there, I was forced to sit to rest me under the hedge, and while I sat, I heard wheels, and saw a coach come on. I stood up and lifted my hand. It stopped. I asked where it was going. The driver named a place a long way off, and where I was sure Mr. Rochester had no connections. I asked for what sum he would take me there. He said 30 shillings. I answered I had but 20. Well, he would try to make it do. He further gave me leave to get into... He further gave me leave to get into the inside. As the vehicle was empty, I entered, was shut in, and it rolled on its way. Gentle reader, may you never feel what I felt. May your eyes never shed such stormy, scalding, heart-wrung tears as poured from mine. May you never appeal to heaven in prayers so hopeless and agonized as in that hour left my lips. For never may you, like me, dread to be the instrument of evil to what you wholly love. Damn. Ow. Ow, my heart. Chapter 28. 2 days are past. It is a summer evening. The coachman has set me down at a place called Whitcross. He could take me no farther for the sum I had given, and I was not possessed of another shilling in the world. The coach is a mile off by this time. I am alone. At this moment I discover that I forgot to take my parcel out of the pocket of the coach, where I had placed it for safety. There it remains, there it must remain, and now I am absolutely destitute. Whitcross is no town, nor even a hamlet. It is but a stone pillar set up where 4 roads meet, whitewashed, I suppose, to be more obvious at a distance in darkness. 4 arms spring from its summit. The nearest town to which these point is, according to the inscription, distant 10 miles, the farthest above 20. From the well-known names of these towns, I learn in what country I have lighted. A North Midland shire, dusk with moorland, ridged with mountain, this I see. There are great moors behind, and on each hand of me. There are waves of mountains far beyond that deep valley at my feet. The population here must be thin, and I see no passengers on these roads. They stretch out east, west, north, and south. White, broad, lonely. They are all cut in the moor, and the heather grows deep and wild to their very verge. Yet a chance traveler might pass by, and I wish no eye to see me now. Strangers would wonder what I'm doing, lingering here at the signpost, evidently objectless and lost. I might be questioned. I could give no answer but what would sound incredible and excite suspicion. Not a tie holds me to human society at this moment. Not a charm or hope calls me where my fellow creatures are. None that saw me would have a kind thought or a good wish for me. I have no relative but the universal mother, Nature. I will seek her breast and ask repose. I struck straight into the heath. I held on to a hollow I saw deeply furrowing the brown moorside. I waded knee-deep in its dark growth. I turned with its turnings, and finding a moss-blackened granite crag in a hidden angle, I sat down under it. High banks of moor were about me. The crag protected my head. The sky was over that. Some time passed before I felt tranquil even here. I had a vague dread that wild cattle might be near, or that some sportsman or poacher might discover me. If a gust of wind swept the waste, I looked up. If a gust of wind swept the waste, I looked up, fearing it was the rush of a bull. If a plover whistled, I imagined it a man. Finding my apprehensions unfounded, however, and calmed by the deep silence that reigned as evening declined at nightfall, I took confidence. As yet I had not thought, I had only listened, watched, dreaded. Now I regained the faculty of reflection. Yeah? What was I to do? Where to go? Oh, intolerable questions. When I could do nothing and go nowhere. When a long way must yet be measured by my weary, trembling limbs before I could reach human habitation. When cold charity must be entreated before I could get a lodging. Reluctant sympathy importuned. Almost certain repulse incurred. Before my tale could be listened to, or one of my wants relieved. I touched the heath. It was dry and yet warm with the heat of summer day. I looked at the sky. It was pure. A kindly star twinkled just above the chasm ridge. The dew fell, but with propitious softness. No breeze whispered. Proprietus. Softness. No breeze whispered. Nature seemed to me benign and good. I thought she loved me, outcast as I was, and I, who from man could anticipate only mistrust, rejection, insult, clung to her with a filial fondness. Tonight, at least, I would be her guest. As I was her child, my mother would lodge me without money and without price. I had one morsel of bread yet, the remnant of a roll I had bought in a town we passed through at noon with a stray penny, my last coin. I saw ripe bilberries gleaming here and there, like jet beads in the heath. I gathered a handful and ate them with the bread. My hunger sharp before was, if not satisfied, appeased by this hermit's meal. I said my evening prayers at its conclusion, and then chose my couch. It's probably a bed of moss. Beside the crag, the heath was very deep. When I lay down, my feet were buried in it, rising high on each side. Oh, 1 second. Not right now. Not right now. Sorry about that. It left only a narrow space for the night air to invade. I folded my shawl double and spread it over me as a coverlet. A low, mossy swell was my pillow. Yeah, moss. Thus lodged, I was not, at least, at the commencement of night. I was not, at least, at the commencement of the night, cold. So she's like, I didn't freeze to death. Hooray. My rest might have been blissful enough, only a sad heart broke it. It plained of its gaping wounds, its inward bleeding, its riven cords. It trembled for Mr. Rochester and his doom. It bemoaned him with bitter pity. It demanded him with ceaseless longing. And impotent as a bird with both wings broken, it still quivered its shattered pinions in vain attempts to seek him. Worn out with this torture of thought, I rose to my knees. Night was come, and her planets were risen, a safe, still night, too serene for the companionship of fear. We know that His Holiness is everywhere, but certainly we feel his presence most when his works are on the grandest scale spread before us. And it is in the unclouded night sky where his words wheel their silent course that we read clearest his infinitude, his omnipotence, his omnipresence. I had risen to my knees to pray for Mr. Rochester. Looking up, I, with tear-dimmed eyes, saw the mighty Milky Way. Remembering what it was, what countless systems there swept space like a soft trace of light, I felt the might and strength of God. Sure was I of his efficiency to save what he had made. Convinced I grew that neither earth should perish, nor one of the souls it treasured. I turned my prayer to thanksgiving. The source of life was also the savior of spirits. Mr. Rochester was safe. Oh my gosh, she's just going on a religious little rambling. I mean, that's what some people need, man. Mr. Rochester was safe. He was God's, and by God would he be guarded. I again nestled to the breast of the hill, and ere long in sleep forgot sorrow. But the next day, want came to me pale and bare, long after the little birds had left their nests, long after bees had come in the sweet prime of day to gather the heath honey before the dew was dried. When the long morning shadows were curtailed, and the sun filled earth and sky, I got up and I looked around me. What a still, hot, perfect day! What a golden desert this spreading moor! Everywhere sunshine. I wished I could live in it and on it. I saw a lizard run over the crag. I saw a bee busy among the sweet bilberries. I would fain at the moment have become bee or lizard, that I might have found fitting nutriment, permanent shelter here. But I was a human being, and had a human being's wants. I must not linger where there was nothing to supply them. I rose. I looked back at the bed I had left. Hopeless of future, I wished but this, that my Maker had that night thought good to require my soul of me while I slept. Hello, Andre. How are you doing? I hope you're having a lovely day. We're just being nice and cozy, reading Jane Eyre. We're on chapter 28. A lot has happened. You can see my VODs to catch up with the plot if you want, or you can just enjoy the gentle reading that I offer in general. Either way, I hope you're having a good time. And welcome to my chat. Also, dang, right when the ad hits. I'm drinking the last little bit of my tea. I'm gonna let the ad finish up. I wonder, like, what's gonna happen in the next, like, 125 chapters? Or 150 chapters ish. I mean, not chapters, pages. What's gonna happen in the last little bit of the book? Like, what's gonna happen? Where's she gonna be? Is she gonna end up happy? I have no fucking clue. Hard to tell, actually. Because, like, it would take a lot for her to, like, build up a whole new life for herself. But I mean, oh, my day's going well, and I'm feeling pretty good. I know I'm still kind of getting over an illness, but generally speaking, having a pretty good day. And since the ad break is over, I'm going to resume my reading. Feel free to join the Discord. There's a link down below if you want to chat more. Feel free to send messages in chat. Just know that while I'm reading, I might not get to respond as quickly as you might want. Either way, I hope you enjoy, and I hope you get nice and cozy and enjoy relaxing with me. Okay? Okay. And that this weary frame, absolved by death from further conflict with fate, had now but to decay quietly and mingle in peace with the soil of this wilderness. Life, however, was yet in my possession, with all its requirements and pains and responsibilities. The burden must be carried, the want provided for, the suffering endured, the responsibility fulfilled. I set out. Whitcross regained. I followed a road which led from the sun, now fervent and high. By no other circumstance had I will to decide my choice. I walked a long time, and when I thought I had nearly done enough, and might conscientiously yield to the fatigue that almost overpowered me, might relax this forced action, and, sitting down on a stone I saw near, submit resistlessly to the apathy that clogged heart and limb. I heard a bell chime, a church bell. I turned in the direction of the sound, and there, amongst the romantic hills, whose changes and aspect I had ceased to note an hour ago, I saw a hamlet and a spire. All the valley at my right hand was full of pasture fields and cornfields and wood, and a glittering stream of zigzag through the varied shades of green, the mellowing grain, the somber woodland, the clear and sunny Lee? I don't know. Recalled by the rumbling of wheels to the road before me. I saw a heavily laden wagon laboring up the hill, and not far beyond were two cows and their drover. Human life and human labor were near. I must struggle on, strive to live, and bend to toil like the rest. About 2 o'clock p.m., I entered the village. At the bottom of its one street there was a little shop with some cakes of bread in the window. I coveted a cake of bread. With that refreshment I could perhaps regain a degree of energy. Without it, it would be difficult to proceed. The wish to have some strength and some vigor returned to me as soon as I was amongst my fellow beings. I felt it would be degrading to faint with hunger on the causeway of a hamlet. Had I nothing about me I could offer in exchange for one of these rolls? I considered. I had a small silk handkerchief tied around my throat. I had my gloves. I could hardly tell how men and women in extremities of destitution proceeded. I did not know whether either of these articles would be accepted. Probably they would not, but I must try. I entered the shop. A woman was there. Seeing a respectably dressed person, a lady as she supposed, she came forward with civility. How could she serve me? I was seized with shame. My tongue would not utter the request I had prepared. I dared not offer her the half-worn gloves, the creased handkerchief. Besides, I felt it would be absurd. I only begged permission to sit down a moment, as I was tired. Disappointed in the expectation of a customer, she coolly acceded to my request. She pointed to a seat. I sank into it. To I felt sorely urged to weep, but conscious how unreasonable such a manifestation would be, I restrained it. Soon I asked her if there were any dressmaker or plain workwoman in the village. Yes, two or three, quite as many as there was employment for. I reflected. I was driven to the point now. I was brought face to face with necessity. I stood in the position of one without a resource, without a friend, without a coin. I must do something. What? I must apply somewhere. Where? Did she know of any place in the neighborhood where a servant was wanted? Thank you, Malekith. Hi, welcome in. By the way, I'm not doing shoutouts today. It's my gentle voice reading stream day, so. Uh, I'm doing well. Jane Eyre is getting very dramatic right now. The book is, the book's getting wild. We had a massive plot twist, and now Jane is just wandering. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Like a lot. So just get comfy and enjoy my reading if you want. That's fine. Did she know of any place in the neighborhood where a servant was wanted? Nay, she couldn't say. What was the chief trade in this place? What did most of the people do? Some were farm laborers. A good deal worked at Mr. Oliver's needle factory at the foundry. Did Mr. Oliver employ women? Nay, it was men's work. And what do the women do? I naunt, was the answer. Some does one thing and some another. Poor folk mun get on as they can. She seemed to be tired of my questions, and indeed, what claim had I to importune her? A neighbor or two came in. My chair was evidently wanted. I took leave. I passed up the street, looking as I went at all the houses to the right hand and to the left, but I could discover no pretext, nor see an inducement to enter any. I rambled around the hamlet, going sometimes to a little distance and returning again, for an hour or more, much exhausted and suffering greatly now for want of food. I turned aside into a lane and sat down under the hedge. Ere many minutes had elapsed, I was again on my feet. However, and again searching something, a resource, or at least an informant. A pretty little house stood at the top of the lane, with a garden before it, exquisitely neat and brilliantly blooming. I stopped at it. What business had I to approach the white door or touch the glittering knocker? In what way could it possibly be the interest of the inhabitants of that dwelling to serve me? Yet I drew near and knocked. A mild-looking, cleanly attired young woman opened the door. In such a voice as might be expected from a hopeless heart and a fainting frame, a voice wretchedly low and faltering, I asked if a servant was wanted here. No, said she, we do not keep a servant. Can you tell me where I could get employment of any kind? I continued. I am a stranger without acquaintance in this place. I want some work, no matter what. But it was not her business to think for me, or to seek a place for me. Besides, in her eyes, how doubtful must have appeared my character, position, tale. She shook her head. She was sorry she could give me no information. And the white door closed, quite gently and civilly, but it shut me out. If she had held it open a little longer, I believe I should have begged a piece of bread, for I was now brought low. Oh, I could not bear to return to that sordid village, where, besides, no prospect of aid was visible. I should have longed rather to deviate to a wood I saw not far off, which appeared in its thick shade to offer inviting shelter. But I was so sick, so weak, so gnawed with nature's cravings. Instinct kept me roaming round the abodes, where there was a chance of food. Solitude would be no solitude, rest no rest. The vulture, hunger, thus sank beak and talons in my side. I drew near houses, I left them, and came back again, and again I wandered away, always repelled by the consciousness of having no claim to ask, no right to expect interest in my isolated lot. Meantime, the afternoon advanced. While I thus wandered about like a lost and starving dog, in crossing a thornfield I saw the church spire before me. I hastened towards it. Near the churchyard, and in the middle of a garden, stood a well-built, though small house, which I had no doubt was the parsonage. I remembered that strangers who arrive at a place where they have no friends and who want employment sometimes apply to the clergyman for introduction and aid. It is the clergyman's function to help, at least with advice, those who wished to help themselves. I seemed to have something like a right to seek counsel here. Renewing then my courage, and gathering my feeble remains of strength, I pushed on. I reached the house, and knocked at the kitchen door. An old woman opened. I asked, was this the parsonage? Yes. Was the clergyman in? No. Would he be in soon? No, he was gone from home. To a distance? Not so far. Happened 3 mile. He had been called away by the sudden death of his father. He was at Marsh End now, and would very likely stay there a fortnight longer. Was there any lady of the house? Nay, there was not but her, and she was housekeeper. And of her reader, I could not bear to ask the relief for want of which I was thinking. I could not yet beg, and again I crawled away. Once more I took off my handkerchief. Once more I thought of the cakes of bread in the little shop. Oh, but for a crust! For but one mouthful to allay the pang of famine. Instinctively I turned my face again to the village. I found the shop again, and I went in, and though others were there besides the woman, I ventured the request. Would she give me a roll for this handkerchief? She looked at me with evident suspicion. Nay, she never sold stuff in that way. Almost desperate, I asked for half a cake. She again refused. How could she tell where I had gotten the handkerchief? She said. Would she take my gloves? No, what would she do with them? Yeah. Reader, it is not pleasant to dwell on these details. Some say there is enjoyment in looking back to painful experience past, but at this day I can scarcely bear to review the times to which I allude. The moral degradation, blent with the physical suffering, from form too distressing a recollection to ever be willingly dwelt upon. I blamed none of those who repulsed me. I felt it was what was to be expected, In what could not be helped, an ordinary beggar is frequently an object of suspicion, a well-dressed beggar inevitably so. To be sure, what I begged was employment, but whose business was it to provide me with employment? Not certainly that of persons who saw me then for the first time, and who knew nothing of my character. As to the woman who would not take my handkerchief in exchange for her bread, why, she was right. If the offer appeared to her sinister or the exchange unprofitable, let me condense now. I am sick of the subject. Yeah. A little before dark, I passed a farmhouse, at the open door of which the farmer was sitting, eating his supper of bread and cheese. I stopped and said, "Will you give me a piece of bread, for I am very hungry?" He cast on me a glance of surprise, but without answering, he cut a thick slice from his loaf and gave it to me. I imagine he did not think I was a beggar, but only an eccentric sort of lady who had taken a fancy to his brown loaf. As soon as I was out of sight of his house, I sat down and ate it. I could not hope to get a lodging under a roof, and sought it in the wood I have before alluded to. But my night was wretched, my rest broken, the ground was damp, the air cold. Besides, intruders passed near me more than once, and I had again and again to change my quarters. No sense of safety or tranquillity befriended me. Towards morning it rained. The whole of the following day was wet. Do not ask me, reader, to give a minute account of that day. As before, I saw it work. As before, I was repulsed. As before, I starved. But once, uh, but once, but once did food pass my lips. At the door of a cottage I saw a little girl about to throw a mess of cold porridge into a pig trough. "Will you give me that?" I asked. She stared at me. "Mother," she exclaimed, "there is a woman who wants me to give her these porridge." "Well, lass," replied a voice within, "give it her if she's a beggar. Uh, Tea-Pig doesn't want it." The girl emptied the stiffened mold into my hand, and I devoured it ravenously. As the wet twilight deepened, I stopped in a solitary bridle path, which I had been perusing an hour or more. No, pursuing an hour more. "My strength is quite failing me," I said in a soliloquy. "I feel I cannot go much farther. Shall I be an outcast again this night? While the rain descends so, must I lay my head on the cold, drenched ground? I fear I cannot do otherwise, for who will receive me? But it will be very dreadful, with this feeling of hunger, faintness, chill, and this sense of desolation, this total prostration of hope. In all likelihood, though, I should die before morning. And why cannot I reconcile myself to the prospect of death? Why do I struggle to retain a valueless life, because I know, or believe, Mr. Rochester is living, and then to die of want and cold is a fate to which nature cannot submit passively? Oh, Providence, sustain me a little longer, aid, direct me." My glazed eye wandered over the dim and misty landscape. I saw I had strayed far from the village. It was quite out of sight. The very cultivation surrounding it had disappeared. I had, by crossways and by paths, once more drawn near the tract of moorland, and now only a few fields, almost as wild and unproductive as the heath from which they were scarcely reclaimed, lay between me and the dusky hill. "Well, I would rather die yonder than in a street or on a frequented road," I reflected. "And far better that crows and ravens, if any ravens there be in these regions, should pick my flesh from my bones, than that they should be prisoned in a workhouse coffin and moulder in a pauper's grave." Damn. To the hill then I turned. I reached it. It remained now only to find a hollow where I could lie down and feel at least hidden. if not secure. But all the surface of the waste looked level. It showed no variation but of tint, green where rush and moss overgrew the marshes, black where the dry sorrel bore only heath. Dark as it was getting, I could still see changes through but as mere alternations of light and shade, for color had faded with the daylight. My eye still roved over the sullen swell and along the moor edge, vanishing amidst the wildest scenery, when at one dim point, far in among the marshes and the ridges, a light sprang up. That is an ignis fatuus, was my first thought, and I expected it would soon vanish. It burnt on, however, quite steadily, neither receding nor advancing. Is it then a bonfire just kindled? I questioned. I watched to see whether it would spread, but no. As it did not diminish, so it did not enlarge. It may be a candle in a house, I then conjectured, but if so, I can never reach it. It is much too far away, and were it within a yard of me, what would it avail? I should but knock at the door to have it shut in my face. And I sank down where I stood, and hid my face against the ground. I lay still a while. The night wind swept over the hill and over me, and died moaning in the distance. The rain fell fast, wetting me afresh to the skin. Could I but have stiffened to the still frost, the friendly numbness of death, it might have felt it on. I should not have felt it, but my yet living flesh shuddered at its chilling influence. I rose ere long. The light was yet there, shining dim but constant through the rain. I tried to walk again. I dragged my exhausted limbs slowly toward it. It led me aslant over the hill, through a wide bog, which would have been impassable in winter, and was splashy and shaky even now, in the height of summer. Here I fell twice, but as often I arose and rallied my faculties. This light was my forlorn hope. I must gain it. Having crossed the marsh, I saw a trace of white over the moor. I approached it. It was a road or track. It led straight up to the light, which now beamed from a sort of knoll amidst a clump of trees, firs apparently, from what I could distinguish of the character of their forms and foliage through the gloom. My star vanished as I drew near. Some obstacle had intervened between me and it. I put out my hand to feel the dark mass before me. I discriminated the rough stones of a low wall. Above it, something like palisades, and within, a high and prickly hedge. I groped on. Again, a whitish object gleamed before me. It was a gate, a wicket. It moved on its hinges when I touched it. On each side stood a sable bush, holly or yew. Entering the gate and passing the shrubs, the silhouette of a house rose to view, black, low, and rather long, but the guiding light shone nowhere. All was obscurity. Were the inmates retired to rest? I feared it must be so. In seeking the door, I turned an angle. There shot out the friendly gleam again from the lozenged panes of a very small latticed window, within a foot of the ground, made still smaller by the growth of ivy or some other creeping plant, whose leaves clustered thick over the portion of the house wall in which it was set. The aperture was so screened and narrow that curtain or shutter had been deemed unnecessary. And when I stooped down and put aside the spray of foliage shooting over it, I could see all within. I could see clearly a room with a sanded floor, clean scoured, a dresser of walnut with pewter plates arranged in rows, reflecting the redness and radiance of a glowing peat fire. I could see a clock, a white deal table, some chairs. The candle, whose ray had been my beacon, burnt on the table, and by its light an elderly woman, somewhat rough-looking, but scrupulously clean, like all about her, was knitting and stocking. I noticed these objects cursorily only. In them there was nothing extraordinary. A group of more interest appeared near the hearth, sitting still amidst the rosy peace and warmth suffusing it. Two young, graceful women, ladies in every point, sat, one in a low rocking chair, the other on a lower stool. Both wore deep mourning of crepe and bombazine, which sombre garb singularly set off very fair necks and faces. A large old pointer dog rested its massive head on the knee of one girl. In the lap of the other was a cushioned black cat. How cute. A strange place was this humble kitchen for such occupants. Who were they? They could not be the daughters of the elderly person at the table, for she looked like a rustic, and they were all delicacy and cultivation. I had nowhere seen such faces as theirs, and yet, as I gazed on them, I seemed intimate with every lineament. I cannot call them handsome. They were too pale and grave for the word. Hey, don't knock pale people. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. As they each bent over a book, they looked thoughtful almost to severity. A stand between them supported a second candle, and two great volumes, to which they frequently referred, comparing them, seemingly, with the smaller books they held in their hands, like people consulting a dictionary to aid them in the task of translation. This scene was as silent as if all figures had been shadows, and the firelit apartment a picture. So hushed was it, I could hear the cinders fall from the grate, the clock tick in its obscure corner, and I even fancied I could distinguish the click-click of the woman's knitting needles. When, therefore, a voice broke the strange stillness at last, it was audible enough for me. Yeah, I imagine you'd be able to hear it, dork. Listen, Diana, said one of the absorbed students. Franz and old Daniel are together in the night time, and Franz is telling a dream from which he has awakened in terror. Listen. And in a low voice she read something, of which not one word was intelligible to me, for it was in an unknown tongue, neither French nor Latin. Whether it were Greek or German I could not tell. That is strong, she said, when she had finished. I relish it. The other girl, who had lifted her head to listen to her sister, repeated while she gazed at the fire a line of what had been read. At a later day I knew the language and the book. Therefore I will here quote the line, though when I first heard it, it was only like a stroke on sounding brass to me, conveying no meaning. Dat hat herver einen Ansuchen, we die sternen Nacht. I think, good, she exclaimed. I think that's German. I don't know. She exclaimed while her dark and deep eyes sparkled. There you have a dim and mighty archangel fitly set before you. The line is worth 100 pages of Fustaine. Ich was die Gedanken in der Schal means Zorns und die Work mit dem Gewitch meins Grimm's. I like it. I don't know. Both were again silent. Uh, is there uh is there any country where they walk in that way? Asked the old woman, looking up from her knitting. Yes, Hannah. A far larger country than England, where they talk in no other way. well, for sure. Case I haven't how they understand to one to other. Uh, and if either o' ye went there, ye could tell what they said, I guess. I don't know what they're saying. I'm bad. I'm so bad. When an ad breaks, so I'm stretching. Ooh. I'm sorry about that. That must have been terrifying for someone. Kind of wonder if the microphone got it. This clip is for me, not for you. I'm wondering where it's going with this. I'm very confused. Like genuinely very confused. Like, is she gonna end up living with these people? Because it seems like it was like gently implying that she was led here by the candlelight. And I'm not exactly sure if she was. I wonder if she's just like, I don't know, doing the depressing thing of like looking and watching a happy little family and being envious of them and wishing she could be there, wishing she could join them, wishing, wishing, wishing. Anyway, we could probably tell something of what they said, but not all, for we are not as clever as you think us, Hannah. We don't speak German, and we cannot read it without a dictionary to help us. Yeah, it's German. And what good does it do you? We mean to teach it sometime, or at least the elements, as they say. And then we shall get more money than we do now. Very like, but give o'er studying. We've you've done ye've done enough for tonight. I think we have. At least I'm tired. Mary, are you? Mortally. After that, it's tough work. Uh, it's quite tough working away at a language with no master but a lexicon. It is, especially such a language as this crabbed but glorious Dutch. I wonder when St. John will come home. Surely he will not be long now. It is just 10. Looking at a little gold watch she drew from her girdle. It rains fast. Hannah, will you have the goodness to look at the fire in the parlor? The woman rose. She opened a door through which I dimly saw a passage. Soon I heard her stir a fire in an inner room. She presently came back. Ah, childer, said she, it fair troubles me to go into yond room now. It looks so lonesome, with the chair empty and set back in the corner. Ah. She wiped her eyes with her apron. The two girls, grave before, looked sad now. But he is in a better place, continued Hannah, not Handa, what the hell? We shouldn't wish him here again, and then nobody need to have a quieter death nor he had. You say he never mentioned us? Inquired one of the ladies. He hadn't time, bairn. He was gone in a minute. Was your father? He had been a bit ailing like the day before, but not to signify. And when St. John asked if he would like either of ye to be sent for, he fair laughed at him. He began again with a bit of a heaviness in his head the next day. That is, a fortnight sin. And he went to sleep and never wakened. He were almost stark when your brother went into the chamber and found him. Ah, childer, that's the last the old stock. For he and Mr. St. John is like of different sort. To them, that's gone. To them, it's gone. For all your mother, Wormich, in your way, and almost as a book learned, she wore the picture of you. Mary Diana is more like your father. Thank you so much, Agent, for the follow. I appreciate you being around. I hope you enjoy. I thought them so similar I could not tell where the old servant, for such I now concluded her to be, saw the difference. Both were fair complexioned and slenderly made. Both possessed faces full of distinction and intelligence. One, to be sure, had hair a shade darker than the other, and there was a difference in their style of wearing it. Mary's pale brown locks were parted and braided smooth. Diana's duskier tresses covered her neck with thick curls. The clock struck 10. "You'll want your supper, I'm sure," observed Hannah, "and so will Mr. St. John when he comes in." Oh boy, why is Jane not being like, "Oh shit, I should probably back up"? And she proceeded to prepare the meal. The ladies rose. They seemed about to withdraw to the parlor. Till this moment I had been so intent on watching them, their appearance and conversation had excited in me so keen an interest. I had half forgotten my own wretched position. Now it recurred to me, more desolate, more desperate than ever. It seemed from contrast. Yeah, and how impossible did it appear to touch the inmates of this house with concern on my behalf. To make them believe in the truth of my wants and woes, to induce them to vouchsafe a rest for my wanderings. As I groped out the door and knocked at it hesitatingly, I felt the last idea to be a mere chimera. Hannah opened. What do you want?" she inquired in a voice of surprise, as she surveyed me by the light of the candle she held. "May I speak to your mistresses?" I said. "You had better tell me what you have to say to them. Where do you come from?" "I am a stranger. What is your business here at this hour?" "I want a night's shelter, in an outhouse or anywhere, and a morsel of bread to eat." No, no. Distrust, the very feeling I had dreaded, appeared on Hannah's face. "I'll give you a piece of bread," she said, after a pause. "But we can't take in a vagrant to lodge. It isn't likely." "Do let me speak to your mistresses." "No, not I. What can they do for you? You should not be roving about now. It looks very ill." "But where shall I go if you drive me away? What shall I do?" "Oh, I'll warrant you know where to go and what to do. Mind you don't do wrong, that's all. Here's a penny, now go." "A penny cannot feed me, and I have no strength to go farther. Don't shut the door. Oh, don't, for God's sake." "I must. The rain is driving in." "Tell the young ladies. Let me see them." "Indeed I will not. You are not what you ought to be, or you wouldn't make such a noise. Move off." "But I must die if I am turned away." "Not you. I'm feared you have some ill plans agate that brings you about folks' houses at this time o' night. If you've any followers, housebreakers or such the like, anywhere near, you may tell them we are not by ourselves in this house. We have a gentleman, and dogs and guns." Here the honest but inflexible servant clapped the door to and bolted it within. This was the climax, a pang of exquisite suffering, a throe of true despair, rent and heaved my heart. Worn out indeed I was. Not another step could I stir. I sank on the wet doorstep. I groaned. I wrung my hands. I wept in utter anguish. Oh, this spectre of death! Oh, this last hour, approaching in such horror! Alas, this isolation, this banishment from my kind! Not only the anchor of hope, but the footing of fortitude was gone, at least for a moment, but the last I soon endeavored to regain. I can but die, I said, and I believe in God. Let me try to wait. His will in silence. Ah, these words I not only thought, but uttered, and thrusting back all my misery into my heart, I made an effort to compel it to remain there, dumb and still. All men must die, said a voice close at hand, but all are not condemned to meet a lingering and premature doom, such as yours would be if you perished here of want. Who or what speaks? I asked, terrified at the unexpected sound, and incapable now of deriving from any occurrence a hope of aid. A form was near. What form? The pitch dark night and my enfeebled vision prevented me from distinguishing. With a loud, long knock, the newcomer appealed at the door. Is it you, Mr. St. John? Cried Hannah. Yes, yes, open quickly. Well, how wet and cold you must be, such a wild night as it is. Come in, your sisters are quite uneasy about you, and I believe there are bad folks about. There has been a beggar woman. I declare she is not gone yet. Laid down there. Get up, for shame. Move off, I say. Rude. Hush, Hannah. I have a word to say to the woman. You have done your duty in excluding. Now let me do mine in admitting her. I was near and listened to both you and her. I think this is a peculiar case. I must at least examine into it. Young woman, rise and pass before me into the house. With difficulty I obeyed him. Presently I stood within that clean, bright kitchen, on the very hearth, trembling, sickening, conscious of an aspect in the last degree ghastly, wild, and weather-beaten. The two ladies, their brother, Mr. St. John, the old servant, were all gazing at me. Yeah, that seems like it'd be a really real situation to be in. Yeah, that is so uncomfortable. That is so uncomfortable. That is peak awkward. St. John, who is it? I heard one ask. I cannot tell. I found her at the door, was the reply. She does look white, said Hannah. As white as clay or death, was responded. She will fall. Let her sit. And indeed my head swam. I dropped, but a chair received me. I still possessed my senses, though just now I could not speak. Perhaps a little water would restore her. Hannah, fetch some. But she is worn to nothing. How very thin, how very bloodless. A mere spectre. Is she ill or only famished? Famished, I think, Hannah. Famished, I think. Hannah, is that milk? Give it me, and a piece of bread. Diana, I knew her by the long curls. Oh, no worries, no worries. So, this is Jane Eyre. We are actually getting kind of close to the end. Um, we're following the main character, Jane Eyre. Uh, she had signed on to be a governess for one Mr. Rochester. She did her job well. Um, oh, no worries, no worries. Uh, she did her job very well for Mr. Rochester. They ended up falling in love. Um, but unfortunately, Mr. Rochester, like right as they were gonna get married, they were literally at the altar with the priest there. It was uncovered that he was already married. But he felt that he had a right to marry someone else because his current wife, um, was considered a mad woman and she would regularly try to murder him and other people. And she definitely needs to be in a mental institution of some kind to get the proper help. Um, but Jane was like, "Well, I can't marry you because you're married, and also you deceived me, you lied to me." And he was trying to keep her at his house for as long as he could to try to, convince her to, be with him, marry him, make him happy. Uh, but she basically realized that no, yeah, yeah. Um, but she realized, I have to leave. I have to leave like right now because she is still in love with him and she is very hurt. And so she's kind of been wandering around. She like left, walked like 10 miles away, and she's been dealing with being essentially homeless, penniless, and not knowing what to do. And she finally came upon a house that she eavesdropped on them for a while. Don't know why she did that, but she's like starving and freezing, and she's in just a very bad place. And the people she had been eavesdropping on, she knocked on the door and was like, "Hey, can I have like some bread and can I sleep here tonight?" And they were like, no, no, you should leave." And then she just sat on the door because she's like, "I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to starve and freeze to death, and that's it. That's all she wrote." But uh, a man named Mr. Saint John, which is the brother of the two women that she had been eavesdropping on. I know, right? But Mr. St. John is like, "No, let her in. I want to at least like check out what's going on because she's a beggar, but she's wearing like nice clothes and I don't understand." So they're having their first little interaction. Famished, I think. "Hannah, is that milk? Give it me and a piece of bread." Diana, I knew her by the long curls which I saw drooping between me and the fire as she bent over me, broke some bread, dipped it in milk, and put it to my lips. Her face was near mine. I saw there was pity in it, and I felt sympathy in her hurried breathing. In her simple words, too, the same balm-like emotion spoke. "Try to eat." They're already so nice. "Yes, try," repeated Mary gently, and Mary's hand removed my sodden bonnet and lifted my head. I tasted what they offered me, feebly at first, eagerly soon. "Not too much at first. Restrain her," said the brother. "She's had enough," and he withdrew the cup of milk and the plate of bread. "A little more, St. John. Look at the avidity in her eyes." "No more at present, sister. Try if she can speak now. Ask her her name." I felt I could speak, and I answered, "My name is Jane Elliot." Anxious as ever to avoid discovery, I had before resolved to assume an alias. Her actual name is Jane Eyre, but I guess she's well, her full name is Janet Eyre, so she's going by Jane Elliot. "And where do you live? Where are your friends?" "Thank you so much for the follow, and welcome to the welcome to chaos." I was silent. "Can we send for anyone you know?" I shook my head. "What account can you give of yourself?" Somehow, now that I had once crossed the threshold of this house, and once was brought face to face with its owners, I felt no longer outcast, vagrant, and disowned by the wide world. I dared to put off the mendicant. Mendicant? To resume my natural manner and character, I began once more to know myself, and when Mr. St. John demanded an account, which at present I was far too weak to render, I said after a brief pause, "Sir, I can give you no details tonight." "But what, then," said he, "do you expect me to do for you?" "Nothing," I replied. My strength sufficed for but short answers. Diana took the word. Do you mean, she asked, that we have now given you what aid you require, and that we may dismiss you to the moor and the rainy night? I looked at her. She had, I thought, a remarkable countenance, instinct both with power and goodness. I took sudden courage, answering her compassionate gaze with a smile. I said, I will trust you. If I were a masterless and stray dog, I know that you would not turn me from your hearth tonight. As it is, I really have no fear. Do with me and for me as you like, but excuse me from much discourse. My breath is short. I feel a spasm when I speak. All three surveyed me, and all three were silent. Hannah, said Mr. St. John at last, let her sit there at present, and ask her no questions. In 10 minutes more, give her the remainder of that milk and bread. Mary and Diana, let us go into the parlor and talk the matter over. They withdrew. Very soon one of the ladies returned. I could not tell which. A kind of pleasant stupor was stealing over me as I sat by the genial fire. In an undertone, she gave some directions to Hannah. Ere long, with the servant's aid, I contrived to mount a staircase. My dripping clothes were removed. Soon a warm, dry bed received me. I thanked God, experienced amidst an unutterable exhaustion a glow of grateful joy, and slept. Damn. I need to check how long this chapter is. Mm. I think I can make it through this chapter. So we've just gotten to chapter 29. I'm just double checking because I do have to end stream at like 3:30, and it's currently 2:49. Well, 3:25 I have to end it. I think I can at least get through some of it. If not, we can restart the chapter. Thank you for the head pats. I really appreciate it. Big stretch. Okay, we'll see how far I can get into chapter 29, okay? We'll see. I know I'm a little bit of a slow reader, but that's because I'm kind of trying to enunciate my words and everything, so, you know. The recollection of about 3 days and nights succeeding this is very dim in my mind. Thank you so much, Zach, for the follow. I really appreciate it. I can recall some sensations felt in that interval, but few thoughts framed and no actions performed. I knew I was. Slow readers are better? Yeah, I know. Like, we've been getting through like 2, maybe 3 chapters in each stream, so yeah. And you can check out my YouTube channel for a lot of the previous chapters. And my VODs, if I haven't uploaded them to YouTube, you can do too. But obviously, never any pressure to watch anything. I hope you enjoy, like so far. I know I'm still a little sick, so trying to make it as enjoyable as possible. I knew I was in a small room and in a narrow bed. To that bed I seemed to have grown. Hmm? I lay on it motionless as a stone, and to have torn me from it would have been almost to kill me. Well, I hope you. Yeah, it's considered one of the greatest gothic romances of all time, so I don't know if I've done it any justice, but it's a good book and I highly suggest it. To have torn me from it would have been almost to kill me. I took no note of the lapse of time, of the change from morning to noon, yes, from noon to evening. I observed when anyone entered or left the apartment. I could even tell who they were. Great, good job, Jane. I could understand what was said when the speaker stood near to me, but I could not answer. To open my lips or move my limbs was equally impossible. Hannah, the servant, was my most frequent visitor. Her coming disturbed me. I had a feeling that she wished me away, that she did not understand me or my circumstances, that she was prejudiced against me. Diana and Mary appeared in the chamber once or twice a day. They would whisper sentences of this sort at my bedside. It is very well we took her in. Yeah, she was about to fucking die. She was like, I'm gonna die. And then you're like, get out. not Mary. Hannah the servant was like, get out. Yes, she would certainly have been found dead at the door in the morning had she been left out all night. Oh, I still need to reorganize everything. Dang it. I wonder what she has gone through. Strange hardships, I imagine. Poor, emaciated, pallid wanderer. She is not an uneducated person, I should think. By her manner of speaking, her accent was quite pure, and the clothes she took off, though splashed and wet, were a little worn and fine. She has a peculiar face, fleshless and haggard as it is. I rather like it. Oh. And when in good health and animated, I can fancy her physiognomy would be agreeable. I'm gonna ship her with Mary. I don't know, someone just said that she's pretty. Like, oh my god. If someone saw me as an emaciated, almost dead wreck and was like, I could see her being pretty if, like, at her best, I'd be like, oh my gosh. Sorry. Sorry. This is why I never get through chapters quickly. Never once in their dialogues did I hear a syllable of regret at the hospitality they had extended to me, or of suspicion of, or aversion to myself. I was comforted. Mr. St. John came but once. He looked at me and said my state of lethargy was the result of reaction from excessive and protracted fatigue. He pronounced it needless to send for a doctor. Nature, he was sure, would manage best, left to herself. He said every nerve had been overstrained in some way, and the whole system must sleep torpid awhile. There was no disease. He imagined my recovery would be rapid enough when once commenced. These opinions he delivered in a few words, in a quiet, low voice, and added, after a pause, in the tone of a man little accustomed to expansive comment. Rather an unusual physiognomy, certainly not indicative of vulgarity or degradation. Far otherwise, responded Diana. To speak truth, St. John, my heart rather warms to see the poor little soul. I wish we may be able to benefit her permanently. I'm sorry, these two sisters are like crushing on Jane hard. I don't understand. They have such a girl crush on Jane. I love it. Fucking Mary and Diana are like, oh my god, can we keep her? And I'm like, maybe? I don't know. It's very amusing to me. That is hardly likely, was the reply. You will find she is some young lady who has had a misunderstanding with her friends, and has probably injudiciously left them. We may, perhaps, succeed in restoring her to them, if she is not obstinate. But I trace lines of force in her face, which make me skeptical of her tractability. He stood considering me some minutes, then added, she looks sensible, but not at all handsome. Hey! Fuck you, St. John! Fucking Diana and Mary. Oh, she's pretty. St. John, nah. She is so ill, St. John. Ill or well, she would always be plain. The grace and harmony of beauty are quite wanting in those features. Why is everyone so mean to poor Jane? God damn. Okay, we're on an ad break really fast. Can I just say? I know, right? St. John is. I'm sorry for the ads. I'm sorry. Oh my god, that's hilarious. Like, they're being so mean to Jane. Like, again, Mary and Diana, they are fully here for it. But, like, St. John's, like, she's so plain. Oh, goodness. Sorry, just trying to, make sure I can sound okay as soon as the ad break ends and I can continue reading. Still, I love the just like objective like kindness of Diana and Mary. I like how much they like Jane. It's very adorable. It's extremely adorable, and I really appreciate their kindness. I appreciate the whole family's kindness. Like genuinely, they're very nice to her. And welcome back, everybody. We're gonna continue. Uh, on the third day, I was better. On the fourth, I could speak, move, rise in bed, and turn. Thank you. I don't know what the emote is supposed to mean, but it looks like it's just like a reading thing. I really should get a reading emote someday. Anyway, Hannah had brought me some gruel and dry toast, about, as I supposed, the dinner hour. I had eaten with relish. The food was good, void of the feverish flavor which had hitherto poisoned what I had swallowed. When she left me, I was comparatively strong and revived. Ere long, satiety? I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I'm saying. Of repose and desire for action stirred me. I wished to rise, but what could I put on? Only my damp and bemired apparel, in which I had slept on the ground and fallen in the marsh. I felt ashamed to appear before my benefactors so clad. I was spared the humiliation, luckily. On a chair by the bedside were all my own things, clean and dry. My black silk frock hung against the wall. The traces of the bog were removed from it, the creases left by the wet smoothed out. It was quite decent. My very shoes and stockings were purified and rendered quite presentable. There were the means of washing in the room, and a comb and brush to smooth my hair. After a weary process and resting every 5 minutes, I succeeded in dressing myself. My clothes hung loose on me, for I was much wasted, but I covered my deficiencies with a shawl, and once more, clean and respectable looking, no speck of dirt, no trace of the disorder I so hated, and which seemed so to degrade me, left. I crept down on a stone staircase, with the aid of the banisters, to a narrow, low passage, and found my way presently to the kitchen. It was full of the fragrance of new bread and the warmth of a generous fire. Hannah was baking. Prejudices, it is well known, are most difficult to eradicate from the heart whose soil has never been loosened or fertilized by education. They grow there, firm as weeds among stones. Hannah had been cold and stiff. Indeed, at the first, latterly, she had begun to relent a little, and when she saw me come in tidy and well dressed, she even smiled. "Oh, what, you have got up," she said. "You are better, then. You may sit down in my chair on the hearthstone, if you will." She pointed to the rocking chair. I took it. She bustled about, examining me every now and then with the corner of her eye. Turning to me, as she took some loaves from the oven, she asked bluntly, "Did you ever go a begging afore you came here?" I was indignant for a moment, but remembering that anger was out of the question, and that I had indeed appeared as a beggar to her, I answered quietly, but still not without a certain marked firmness. "You are mistaken in supposing me a beggar. I am no beggar, any more than yourself or your young ladies." After a pause, she said, "I do not understand that. You've like no house nor brass, I guess." The want of house or brass, by which I suppose you mean money, does not make a beggar in your sense of the word. "Are you book learned?" she inquired presently. "Yes, very." "But you've never been to a boarding school?" "I was at a boarding school 8 years." She opened her eyes wide. "Whatever cannot ye keep yourself for, then?" "Yeah, that's a good question." "I have kept myself, and I trust shall keep myself again. What are you going to do with these gooseberries?" I inquired as she brought out a basket of the fruit. "Make 'em into pies." "Give them to me, and I'll pick them." "Nay, I do not want ye to do naught." "But I must do something. Let me have them." She consented, and she even brought me a clean towel to spread over my dress, lest, as she said, I should mucky it. I like Hannah. Hannah's growing on me again. "You've not been used to servant's work, I see by your hands," she remarked. "Happen ye've been a dressmaker?" "No, you are wrong. And now, never mind what I have been. Don't trouble your head further about me, but tell me the name of the house where we are." "Some's call it Marsh End, and some's call it Moor House." "And the gentleman who lives here is called Mr. St. John?" "Nay, he doesn't live here. He is only staying a while. When he is at home, he is in his own parish at Morton, the village a few miles off." "Aye, and what is he?" "He is a parson." I remembered the answer of the old housekeeper at the parsonage, when I had asked to see the clergyman. This, then, was his father's residence? "Aye. Old Mr. Rivers lived here, and his father and grandfather, and great grandfather afore him." "The name, then, of that gentleman is Mr. St. John Rivers." "Aye. St. John is like Kirsten is like his christened name. Christened? I don't know. And his sisters are called Diana and Mary Rivers?" "Yes. Their father is dead. Dead 3 weeks in of a stroke." "Aw." "They have no mother?" "The mistress has been dead this mony a year." "Have you lived with the family long?" "I have lived here 30 year. I nursed them all three." "That proves you must have been an honest and faithful servant. I will say so much for you, though you have had the incivility to call me a beggar." "Rude." "Shut up, Jane. Don't act all fucking hoity-toity." She again regarded me with a surprised stare. "I believe," she said, "I was quite mistaken in my thoughts of you. But there is no money cheats. There's so many cheats goes about. You must forgive me." Aw. "And though," I continued rather severely, "you wished to turn me from the door on a night when you should not have shut out a dog." "Well, it was hard, but what can a body do?" I thought more of the childer nor of myself, poor things. They've like nobody to take care on 'em but me. I'm like a look sharpish. I'm a like to look sharpish, huh? I maintained a grave silence for some minutes. "You mustn't think too hardly of me," she again remarked. "But I do think hardly of you," I said, "and I'll tell you why. Not so much because you refused to give me shelter, or regarded me as an impostor, as because you just now made it a species of reproach that I had no brass and no house. Some of the best people that ever lived have been as destitute as I am, and if you are a Christian, you ought not to consider poverty a crime. No more I ought, said she. Mr. St. John tells me so too, and I see I was wrong, but I've clearer a different notion on you now to what I had. You look right down decent. You look a right down decent little critter. Uh, that will do. I forgive you now. Shake hands. That's weird. Jane's being so formal. She put her flowery and horny hand into mine. Another and heartier smile illuminated her rough face, and from that moment we were friends. Aw. Hannah was evidently fond of talking. While I picked the fruit, she made the paste for the pies. She proceeded to give me sundry details. I know, horny hands. About her deceased master and mistress, and the childer, as she called the young people. Old Mr. Rivers, she said, was a plain man enough, but a gentleman, and of as ancient a family as could be found. Marsh End had belonged to the Rivers ever since it was a house, and it was, she affirmed, aboon 200 year old. For all it looked but a small humble place, not to compare with Mr. Oliver's grand hall down in Morton Vale. But she could remember Bill Oliver's family, Bill Oliver's father, a journeyman needlemaker, and the Rivers wore oh my god. I'm sorry, Hannah has such a strong accent. Rivers wore gentry the oud days o' the Henrys, as anybody might see by looking into the registers in Morton Church vestry. Still, she allowed the oud maester was like other folk, not mitch out the common way, stark mad a shooting and farming, and sich like. The mistress was different. She was a great reader and studied a deal, and the bairns had taken after her. There was nothing like them in these parts, nor ever had been. They had liked learning, all three, almost from the time they could speak, and they had always been of a mark of their own. Mr. St. John, when he grew up, would go to college and be a parson, and the girls, as soon as they left school, would seek places as governesses, for they had told her their father had some years ago lost a great deal of money by a man he had trusted turning bankrupt, and as he was now not rich enough to give them fortunes, they must provide for themselves. They had lived very little at home for a long while, and were only come now to stay a few weeks on account of their father's death. But they did so like Marsh End and Morton and all these moors and hills about. They had been in London and many other grand towns, but they always said there was no place like home. And then they were so agreeable with each other, never fell out nor threeped. She did not know where there was such a family for being united. Aw. Having finished my task of gooseberry picking, I asked where the two ladies and their brother were now, gone over to Morton for a walk, but they would be back in half an hour to tea. They returned within the time Hannah had allotted them. They entered by the kitchen door. Mr. St. John, when he saw me, merely bowed and passed through. The two ladies stopped. Mary, in a few words, kindly and calmly expressed the pleasure she felt in seeing me well enough to be able to come down. Diana took my hand. She shook her head at me. You should have waited for my leave to descend, she said. You still look very pale and so thin, poor child, poor girl. Diana had a voice toned to my ear like the cooing of a dove. I have such a crush on Diana. Anyway, she possessed eyes whose gaze I delighted to encounter. Her whole face seemed to me full of charm. What? What? Don't make fun of me. Mary's countenance was equally intelligent, her features equally pretty. Her expression was more reserved, and her manners, though gentle, more distant. Diana looked and spoke with a certain authority. She had a will, evidently. It was my nature to feel pleasure in yielding to an authority supported like hers, and to bend where my conscience and self-respect permitted to an active will. "What business have you here?" she continued. "It is not your place. Mary and I sit in the kitchen sometimes, because at home we like to be free, even to license, but you are a visitor, and must go into the parlor." "I'm very well here." "Not at all, with Hannah bustling about and covering you with flour." "Besides, the fire's too hot for you," interposed Mary. "To be sure," added her sister. "Come, you must be obedient." And still holding my hand, she made me rise, and led me into the inner room. "Sit there," she said, placing me on the sofa, "while we take our things off and get the tea ready. It is another privilege we exercise in our little moorland home, to prepare our own meals when we are so inclined, or when Hannah is baking, brewing, washing, or ironing." She closed the door, leaving me in solace with Mr. St. John, who sat opposite, a book or newspaper in hand. I examined first the parlor and then its occupant. The parlor was a rather small room, very plainly furnished, yet comfortable, because clean and neat. Yeah. The old-fashioned chairs were very bright, and the walnut-wood table was like a looking-glass. A few strange antique portraits of the men and women of other days decorated the stained walls. A cupboard with glass doors contained some books and an ancient set of china. There was no superfluous ornament in the room, not one modern piece of furniture, save a brace of work-boxes and a lady's desk in rosewood, which stood on a side table. Everything, including the carpet and curtains, looked at once well-worn and well-saved. Mr. St. John, sitting as still as one of the dusty pictures on the walls, keeping his eyes fixed on the page he perused, and his lips mutely sealed, was easy enough to examine. Had he been a statue instead of a man, he could not have been easier. He was young, perhaps from 28 to 30, tall, slender, his face riveted, the eye. It was like a Greek face, very pure in outline, quite a straight classic note. Nose, straight classic nose. It's not a note. Quite an Athenian mouth and chin. It is seldom indeed an English face comes so near the antique models as his did. He might well be a little shocked at the irregularity of my lineaments, his own being so harmonious. His eyes were large and blue, with brown lashes. His high forehead, colorless as ivory, was partially streaked over by careless locks of fair hair. This is a gentle delineation, is it not, reader? Yet he whom it describes scarcely impressed one with the idea of a gentle, a yielding, an impressible, or even of a placid nature. Quiescent as he now sat, there was something about his nostril, his mouth, his brow, which to my perceptions indicated elements within either restless or hard or eager. He did not speak to me one word, nor even direct to me one glance, till his sisters returned. Diana, as she passed in and out, in the course of preparing tea, brought me a little cake, baked on the top of the oven. "Eat that now," she said. "You must be hungry. Hannah says you have had nothing but some gruel since breakfast." I did not refuse it, for my appetite was awakened and keen. Mr. Rivers now closed his book, approached the table, and, as he took a seat, fixed his blue pictorial-looking eyes full on me. There was an unceremonious directness, a searching, decided steadfastness in his gaze now. which told that intention and not diffidence had hitherto kept it averted from the stranger. "You are very hungry," he said. "I am, sir. It is my way, it is always my way, by instinct, ever to meet the brief with brevity, the direct with plainness. It is well for you that a low fever has forced you to abstain for the last 3 days. There would have been danger in yielding to the cravings of your appetite at first. Now you may eat, though still not immoderately." "I trust I shall not eat long at your expense, sir," was my very clumsily contrived, unpolished answer. "No," he said coolly. "When you have indicated to us the residence of your friends, we can write to them, and you may be restored to home. That, I must plainly tell you, is out of my powers to do. Being absolutely without home and friends." The three looked at me, but not distrustfully. I felt there was no suspicion in their glances. There was more of curiosity. I speak particularly of the young ladies. I love this so much. St. John's eyes, though clear enough in a literal sense, in a figurative one, were difficult to fathom. He seemed to use them rather as instruments to search other people's thoughts, than as agents to reveal his own, the which combination of keenness and reserve was considerably more calculated to embarrass than to encourage. "Do you mean to say," he asked, "that you are completely isolated from every connection?" "I do. Not a tie links me to any living thing. Not a claim do I possess to admittance under any roof in England. A most singular position at your age." Here I saw his glance directed to my hands, which were folded on the table before me. I wondered what he sought there. His words soon explained the quest. "Have you never been married? Are you a spinster? Oh my." Diana laughed. "Why, she can't be above 17 or 18 years old, St. John," said he. "I am near 19, but I am not married, no." What are you guys talking? I felt a burning glow mount to my face, for bitter and agitating recollections were awakened by the allusion to marriage. They all saw the embarrassment and the emotion. Diana and Mary relieved me by turning their eyes elsewhere than on my crimsoned visage. But the colder and sterner brother continued to gaze, till the trouble he had excited forced out tears as well as color. "Where did you last reside?" he now asked. "You are too inquisitive, St. John," murmured Mary in a low voice, but he leaned over the table and required an answer by a second firm and piercing look. Kind of into him. Then again, I'm into everyone, so. "The name of the place where, and of the person with whom I lived is my secret," I replied concisely, "which, if you like, you have, in my opinion, a right to keep, both from St. John and every other questioner," remarked Diana. Love Diana. I love her. I love her so much. "Yet if I know nothing about you or your history, I cannot help you," he said. "And you need help, do you not?" "I need it, and I seek it so far, sir, that some true philanthropist will put me in the way of getting work which I can do, and remo- remuneration? What the fuck is that word? Sorry. For which will keep me. Um, but if the barest necessities of life, yeah." She's like, "I just want to fucking survive." "I know not whether I am a true philanthropist, yet I am willing to aid you to the utmost of my powers in a purpose so honest. First, then, tell me what you have been accustomed to do, and what you can do." I had now swallowed my tea. I was mightily refreshed by the beverage, as much so as a giant with wine. It gave new tone to my unstrung nerves, and enabled me to address this penetrating young judge steadily. "Mr. Rivers," I said, turning to him and looking at him as he looked at me, openly and without diffidence. You and your sisters have done me a great service, the greatest man can do his fellow being. You have rescued me, by your noble hospitality, from death. This benefit conferred gives you an unlimited claim to my gratitude, and a claim, to a certain extent, on my confidence. I will tell you as much of the history of the wanderer you have harbored as I can tell without compromising my own peace of mind, my own security, moral and physical, and that of others. I am an orphan, the daughter of a clergyman. My parents died before I could know them. I was brought up a dependent, educated in a charitable institution. I will even tell you the name of the establishment, where I passed 6 years as a pupil and 2 as a teacher. Lawwood Orphan Asylum in Blankshire. You will have heard of it, Mr. Rivers. The Reverend Robert Brocklehurst is the treasurer. I have heard of Mr. Brocklehurst, and I have seen the school. I left Lawwood nearly a year since to become a private governess. I obtained a good situation and was happy. This place I was obliged to leave 4 days before I came here. The reason of my departure I cannot and ought not to explain. It would be useless, dangerous, and would sound incredible. No blame attached to me. I am as free from culpability as any one of you three. Miserable I am, and must be, for some time. For the catastrophe which drove me from a house I had found a paradise was of a strange and direful nature. I observed but 2 points in planning my departure: speed, secrecy. To secure these, I had to leave behind me everything I possessed except a small parcel, which in my hurry and trouble of mind I forgot to take out of the coach that brought me to Whitcross. To this neighborhood, then, I came, quite destitute. I slept 2 nights in the open air, and wandered about 2 days without crossing a threshold. But twice in that space of time did I taste food, and it was when, brought by hunger, exhaustion, and despair, almost to the last gasp, that you, Mr. Rivers, forbade me to perish of want at your door, and took me under the shelter of your roof. I know all your sisters have done for me since, for I have not been insensible during my seeming torpor, and I owe to their spontaneous, genuine, genial compassion as large a debt as to your evangelical charity. Dang it, we're at like the last couple of pages. I don't have time for it though. Well, we will continue their conversation next Tuesday. I apologize, but I must end it here, okay? Thank you all so much for coming by. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for being awesome. Um, One second, my alarm's about to go off. I don't want to hurt anyone's ears. But I need to, you know, I gotta go. Gotta get Tiny Human in the house and gotta, prepare for the day. Thank you so much. I will see you again Tuesday. Well, I will actually see you on, Thursday because I do my normal gaming streams on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Oh my goodness. Yes, I will absolutely make a VOD of this one. I'll be uploading it. All the other ones are going to be uploaded to YouTube. Thank you so much. Feel free to join the Discord, me Danny. You can see a link below. I do have to go like right now though. Thank you again so much everyone for coming by. I will see you on Thursday or on Tuesday depending on what streams you like. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.